So these houses that are being built in areas that are increasingly perilous to build, the proposal is that that type of development would no longer be allowed.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Happy New Year, Jim.
It's like riding a bike, isn't it?
It's like riding a bike.
You just get back
That's
and
right.
you just
Get
come
back in
back
the
and
saddle.
in any case, Happy New Year, Marjorie.
To you too.
We're back to live programming after more than a week off. We're just trying to get through this re-entry period like the rest of you. So we're going to open the show with a bit of a listener check-in. As Kyle Austin Young writes in the ideas section of the Globe, quote, "Vacations aren't simply an escape. They're an opportunity to see what life could be like if only we had either abundant leisure or the wherewithal and flexibility to structure our days differently. Even if you didn't go anywhere and you just became part of the couch the past few days, we want to know if you're bringing any lessons from the end of the year slowdown into your first days back in the real world. After days and days of eating badly, spending time with the family, for some people too much time with the family, never checking a work email. Now the sad reality is here. It's January of 2024. The end of democracy could be near, and you've got to sit in endless traffic to make small talk with your coworkers at the office again, just like last year. So what are your coping mechanisms, big and small, as you ease back into the regular slog of work life? Our number is 877-301-8970. I know you do a lot of planning, Marjorie. You're really excellent at planning.
Oh, I'm good at planning.
So how have you planned to re-enter in a way that is more peaceful, more soothing, less jarring? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Well, I don't know if it's more peaceful and soothing.
What are you doing?
Well, basically what I've done since Christmas is clean the house. That's basically what I've done. You know, pick up the debris, you know, get rid of the boxes,
That's
get rid of
great.
the wrapping paper.
No, that's really good.
But it's been kind of cathartic.
It has?
You know, clean out some rooms and start the new year on a fresher note.
nice.
It's not been very exciting, I must say. I know
Yeah.
you had a wonderful trip, as you always do, to Montreal.
I was in Montreal,
Yep,
yes.
and had a lot of good food and swimming in the pool.
I
and all
brought
that
you
kind of
back
thing.
one of those pastries,
I know, it
whatever.
was delicious.
Whatever they're called.
Not as good as the ones at the Newsfeed Cafe.
Well,
though.
it's still from Montreal. In any case, I actually have thought this through.
You have?
I have. Number one, it is only 146 days to Memorial Day. That's number one. That's why it's a 3-day weekend, maybe a 3.5-day weekend. Two, I read, maybe it was that Globe story about how were there things that you learned during your time off that you could integrate into your post-New Year's life? And the answer is yes. I ordinarily, this is true, I almost always sleep on my right side.
Really?
And I found that sleeping on my left side during the... Why you're jealous? Because you don't have any plans. Okay, sleeping on your left side is something I'm going to do. And thirdly, this is the most optimistic I can be.
Why is it better to sleep on your left side? I'm just curious.
Marjorie, if you don't understand, I'm not going to waste time telling you, okay? Seriously.
Okay. I sleep on my stomach.
Do you mind if I finish my list? Or I have a 3-point list here.
Okay, 3-point list.
Can you repeat what point one and two were?
Point one is that you're moved from sleeping on your right side.
That was point 2.
To sleeping on your left side.
That was point 1.
Oh, Memorial Day weekend is 146 days
That's
away.
correct. And you know what point number 3 is? This is the most optimistic.
What's point number 3?
Even if voters decide in November to end democracy as we know it, it's not going to happen until January of 2025.
That's right.
So we get like a year where we can just be in agony. Do you know that voting starts in 2 weeks? Or maybe not 2 weeks, in 13 days in Iowa.
And Donald Trump is winning big time.
In any case, 877-301-8097. Obviously, Marjorie has nothing to add to this conversation.
I don't really have
that
much to add.
Things
Here's what I have to add, though.
What's that?
Well, it is true what they say in all these vacation stories.
What do they say?
That long weekends aren't enough. You really, and even a week from Monday to Friday is not enough. Well, 4-day week is
used to ridicule me.
It's a good thing. But what these vacation stories all say is you need at least 8 days.
You do?
You need to have the 5 days, Monday to Friday, with the weekends on either side to bring you up to, like, what is that, 9 days?
9 days, yeah.
Yeah, you need to have that at least to begin, because you don't begin to decompress until 8 days.
Says who? Who says?
Says all these vacation stories we've been reading this morning in preparation.
So
for
when
talking
do you?
to people.
I assume
So you
then,
have some
based
idea what we're
upon
talking about.
that reading you did, you have planned your next 9-day vacation. When is that starting?
I have not. But I did learn that something I used to do a lot in the summertime, which I kind of thought was pretty good actually, was take a 3-day weekend. I learned if you're going to take a 3-day weekend, better to take off Monday than take off Friday.
Wow.
Yeah, because you have to rush through Monday through Thursday and frantically to try to get that Friday off. And delaying gratification until Monday means your coworkers have no choice but to start the work week without you, Jim.
Really?
Yes. And you can quickly catch up on Tuesday. So if you're thinking about ahead to this year of 3-day weekends, you want to take off Monday instead of Friday. But what you should really do is take a big chunk all at once.
Okay, fine. Can I make a respectful suggestion that may help you? Because you admit you're a little frenzied. Come back to work. Can I make one suggestion that is guaranteed to help?
What, did I do something wrong?
No, not at all.
What?
Sleep on your left side.
Sleep on your left side.
I can't disclose to you why, but I'm telling you, it is unbelievable.
But you know what's interesting? That you can do that because when you're sleeping, you're unconscious. So it's amazing that you could remember to do that. Wouldn't you have to? How would you even know if you were sleeping on your left side?
I've set up a barracade. So that it's very difficult. 877-301-8097. And a moment of seriousness, by the way, it is jarring to come back. By the way, most people take vacations in summer. It's not as jarring as at least for me, is the end of the year thing. Maybe because it's, a fresh start kind of thing, theoretically. It's January, well, today's January 2nd. I was going to say it's January 1st, but it's a new year kind of deal.
New year.
And it really is jarring. And I think some things, we're going to discuss resolutions and whether you make them at the
fresh starts,
later in the
January
thing
1st, fresh starts.
Okay, so here is Jamie's done some research. Apparently, went to WebMD. Where else would you go? Whether you should sleep in your right or left side depends on which health issues you face. The left side may provide more benefits, particularly if you're pregnant. So
do you have an announcement to make?
At the appropriate time, I will share with you, but now is not the time. Thank you, Jamie. It's excellent research. 877-301-8097. We're really looking for practical solutions for people. It is tough. I mean, it's exciting to see your coworkers if you've missed them, which I think I miss my coworkers.
Absolutely.
Are you not? And you do too. And it's really nice to get back together, but it's still stressful. How are you dealing with the stress of the transition? Alan in Salem, you were first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
If you said, can you hear me? We can.
We can, yep.
Hi.
Hey. All right. So I am chair of 2024.
That's good.
And because I'm a Democrat, so I'm really afraid it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I've been watching murder hornet videos on YouTube.
Oh.
Now that lifts everybody's spirits. I think that's a good idea.
Oh no.
Okay.
Murder hornets.
It does for me.
Why is that? Do you think, Alan?
Murder. It's completely distracting.
Yeah.
Because I'm also terrified of hornets.
You are.
But especially murder hornets.
Yeah.
Oh wait,
Who
now,
wouldn't be?
Alan, hold on for a second. Where are the murder hornets, please?
Where's the video? Yeah.
Where are they?
Go to YouTube and just type in murder hornet.
Yeah, but where are they located? Are they in Saugus or are they in Texas?
No.
Okay.
No, they are in They're still in Asia.
In Asia, okay. Here's the good news about the murder hornets, Alan. Remember we were all hysterical about 2 years ago about the killer bees?
Yeah, I remember that.
And the killer
What happened to them?
What they would do is they would surround, the hornets would surround the bees, and they go really, really fast. Remember that?
Yeah.
And kill all the bees inside their nests.
No, really?
Yeah, but they never seem to materialize.
They didn't?
We get really
Whatever
worked
happened
up.
to Y2K? Did that materialize?
Materialize either.
Hey, Alan, it sounds like you've really got a plan.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Watch out for the hornets.
Watch the murder hornet videos to distract you.
I would rather not watch the murder hornet
from
videos.
the end of Western
because we watched the
civilization.
killer bees and we
Thanks,
were all
Alan.
hysterical about they were. I think that they were hornets that were going to kill the bees. The killer
Well,
hornets.
you know who's
killing
on
the
to us?
bees.
Cy Montgomery's on tomorrow. We can talk to her about the
talk to
murder
her
hornets.
about that.
By the
That's
way, apparently our coworkers are obsessed with this left side sleeping thing. Zoe has also done some research in yoga, something I will be doing really soon. Sometimes they tell you to get up from resting by laying on your left side to connect with your femininity.
There you go, Jim.
The left side is associated with the feminine, according to Zoe.
And being pregnant.
Do you do that on your when you're getting up from? You're actually a yoga person.
I do like yoga.
So do you get up and lay on your left side, or well, you don't get up?
I'm not
you lay on
sure.
your left side?
Maybe in my class they don't do that, but it sounds
You
like
do
they're
that
gonna
hot thing, right?
hot yoga. Yes.
How hot is hot?
It's hot.
Really?
It's like 90-some degrees.
You know
It's
what
hot.
it would kill the hornets. Alan, you should be aware of that. Evan in Metro West, welcome. Hi.
Hi, Jim, Marjorie.
Yes.
So the way I'm going to get this year started for the two of us is to tell you we're already doing it. This is the greatest radio show in the Republic, and you guys are setting a great example for us.
This show?
Evan, wow.
What are you,
what
out
a
of your
great way
mind?
to start the new year.
What are
Thank
you talking about?
I'll take it. It's a nice compliment, Evan. Thank you.
Marjorie?
Yes.
Marjorie, I'm not done. I've got another gift for you, okay?
Okay,
So
I'm ready.
I think you think Joey B has a good legacy, but I'm telling you he could have a great legacy. So if he takes his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, and his vice president, Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
and then abdicates his second term and says, "You ladies pick my successor," that would be a powerful move where Kamala could stay on for another 4 years and be the transition that this nation needs, and he could lead the way of retiring at a reasonable age and not deprive the youth of a job.
Evan, my suggestion is you start watching some murder hornet videos. I think it'd be helpful. Evan, thank you for your praise. It really makes us happy to
thank
start
you.
the year.
That was
Thank
a very
you.
sweet call. Our staff is telling us that lying on the left side helps with
This is
digestion.
Hannah. Yeah.
Yes, according to my grandfather. Oh, this is from Hannah. According to my grandfather, who got his medical training in the 1930s. So there you go. Has your digestion improved, Jim, since you've been sleeping on your
Let me
left-hand
tell you
side?
something. When I was in Montreal, you've heard of Schwartz's delicatessen, which I would argue is maybe the greatest delicatessen in the world. You ever heard of Schwartz's?
No, I have
They have
not.
smoked meat, which is essentially corned beef
Yep.
kind of thing. I don't think anyone has ever eaten as many smoked meat sandwiches in 1 week as I did when I was in. I'm serious. It is unbelievable that a body can ingest that much of one thing in such a short period of time, and maybe that is why I
So
did love
one
them.
of your resolutions will be like to lose 5.
One of my resolutions. Well, I'll tell you what my resolution is when we talk about at the end of the show. 877-301-8970 is the number.
An exhausted parent coping with vacation who woke up at 6 this morning in a frantic rush to sign my kids up for summer camp.
Well, 'cause
and that's
you
going
gotta
to be true
you
after
gotta
you
get
spend
there.
the week at home when the schools are closed, the daycares are closed, and you're home stuck in the house with the kids going crazy over their Christmas presents.
You know, in all seriousness, again, one of the reasons I think the transition is so hard is because the elections are so near. And we're going to talk to John King about this later from CNN. Did you see the polling amongst Hispanic voters and young voters, this ABC News poll, where Trump is not gaining, is leading among Hispanic voters, is leading among young voters in the United States. I mean, it is staggering. And so despite whatever tactics you use to try to transition back to real life, it makes it hard.
Here's Emily in Medford, another frazzled parent. The break between Christmas and New Year's is anything but a break for parents with kids home from school. No lounging on the couch, only desperate attempts to pack the days with activities so the kids stop bouncing off the walls. I am rejoicing and being back at work. No more dealing with visiting relatives, no more kids home from school, no more holiday stress, just the peaceful break of work.
Oh,
so there you go.
Well, that's actually a really nice attitude.
Yeah, that is a great attitude. Bob, you take a break?
No, actually, we can take another call.
Okay, Bob in Hollis, thank you for calling.
Hello. Hi, Bob.
I just wanted to let Jim know that if you have trouble with reflux, it's better to sleep on your right side.
Who's got trouble with reflux? What the hell are you talking about?
Right.
What?
Well, with gastroesophageal reflux.
I don't think I have that. Have I talked about that?
Do you have that, Jim?
Okay.
I don't think I've talked, but assuming I did, what are your credentials,
Okay.
Bob? How do you know what you're talking about?
Well, I'm a retired radiologist.
Oh,
and when we did upper GI,
yes.
In order to get the barium into the small bowel,
Sure, the barium.
you put the patient on the right side, and the pylorus and duodenum there is in the dependent position on your right side.
Let me
So
tell you
gravity
something. There's
brings
nothing that I like
barium.
talking about more than getting barium into your small bowel. Let me tell you that, Bob. So, thank you. And if I ever have whatever that problem is you just talked about, I promise I will return to right side sleeping. Bob, thank you for the call. Happy New Year. Appreciate
Matthew from Medford said he was at Schwartz's Smoked Meat in Montreal last week, too. So there you go. You probably ran into each other. And we have
By the way, the line on the coldest, rainiest, there was no snow, virtually no snow, is maybe, and I'm not exact, maybe 150 to 200 people to sit down in the restaurant. Takeout is no big deal, but sit down. It's
Now
amazing.
listen to this.
What's
we
that?
have some clarification on the murder hornet situation.
What is it?
Well, one of our texters says murder hornets are massive. The fear about them was they were capable in just a few of them wiping out entire honeybee nests, and we don't
That's
want
what you're
to
talking
hurt the
about. Yeah,
honeybees.
yeah.
But the bees have retaliated in finding the murder hornet nests, surrounding them, and vibrating their wings to generate so much heat that they cook the murder hornets to death.
Is that really true?
Inside their net. Well, I don't know. I'm just reading a text.
How
I
great
hope
is
that's
that if
right.
it's true?
Yeah. So the bees retaliated.
Wow.
Isn't that clever?
Make a note to ask Cy about that.
We'll ask about
That's
the
really-
murder hornets and the killer bees tomorrow.
We gotta take a
are
break.
talking about vacation. How are you coping? Are you glad to be back to work if your parents have been stuck in the house all week long with these screaming children? Or are you devastated that you've had to get up and begin the whole routine all over again? You're listening to Boston Public Radio. We are back from vacation, broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library. Our number is 877-301-8970. You can call or text us at that number.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We are live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com and youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, we're taking your calls and texts about the coping mechanisms that are helping to get you through what I think is the worst week of the year, re-entry into society after the holidays. Give us a call or a text, 877-301-8970. How are you easing the transition back to reality this week? And I have to say, with all due respect to the callers, we really haven't heard a terrific suggestion yet as to how to ease it. Do you have any?
Well, listen to this one. I started the year with a 2-minute primal scream in my car yesterday morning at 6:45, and it felt great.
You remember that primal scream thing about 30 years ago? That was like a huge catharsis kind of thing that people are supposed to be doing, screaming at the top of their lungs, I guess with other people kind of thing.
And another texter says that the radiologist who concerned about your acid reflux problem.
What is acid reflux?
Says that surely Jim would have already complained about his
if I had it.
acid reflux problem if he had that
What
ailment.
is it? What is it?
It's when you get acid indigestion. Heartburn.
Oh, it's heartburn.
Heartburn.
I don't have heartburn.
Well, that's good, Jim.
877.
We're all relieved.
Well, I'm glad to hear it too. 877-301-8970. You know what I think? It seems to me what you should do is if there's something that you really liked, including just the time off itself, plan it. Don't you find, I mean, we've talked about this before, when it's been a really hard stretch of work, when you're working really hard, the shows, you got to deal with difficult topics. You and I often talk about we only have 3 more weeks till we get a couple of days off or something. So plan, if you want to do one of those 9-day things you say, which is what the minimum need, plan it.
8
and
days.
even if it's whatever it is, plan it, even if it's months away, something to look forward to. How about that for a suggestion?
They do these usual things we always hear about Americans not taking their vacation, that we don't have that much vacation. I think it's
an average of 2 weeks in this country is disgraceful.
Yeah, 15 days.
And
But
people don't take that, by the way.
What is it, 1 in 5 have no paid time off at all, which is really kind of shocking. I mean, that's pretty bad. But those of us who do have vacation, even if it's only 15 days, don't take it all. We're worried about not getting promotions if we do that. We're worried about having to do too much work before we leave, and then when we get back, being way behind. We worry about resentment from our coworkers. There's a lot of things.
Yeah, it's not just vacation, though. It's not just time away from work, because a lot of us like our jobs a lot. It's what you're doing when there's time away for work. Don't you agree?
Yeah. Well, you went away for vacation.
I
Did
did.
you feel exhausted when you came back?
A little.
Yes.
I mean, a little. But I always come back like a day before work, so you have a day to sort of recover kind of thing. So.
Yeah, you need to have a day to recover, Jim. There's no question about that.
877-301-8970. We're looking for good creative suggestions about how to ease back into reality post-Christmas week off for a lot of people. I know there are a lot of people out there who had to work, and our sympathies, but for those of you who are lucky enough not to, Jackie in Plymouth, welcome to the show. Hi, Jackie.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi. So I would just like to say that it's great that the kids went back to school today.
Yeah.
It's been very helpful. It was great when they were home, but it really helps spread out your day. I make lists every day so I don't get overwhelmed.
So do I.
And I kind of break it up into my day. So as far, like returns to the store or the grocery store or a doctor's appointment.
So do I.
And my work.
Here's what I want to do.
Wait. We continue with that. And why does that help? I mean, it helps me because even small things accomplished make you feel like you've done something. And so you're plowing ahead. Why is that helpful to you, Jackie, the list making?
Well, I can visually see that I checked it off. So I did accomplish something. And then on my list for the day, I did get things done. So I'm not discouraged the next day.
That's great. That's a very good attitude.
Do you do the prioritizing them? If you make a list, do you have A list and B listings and C listings? Yeah, that's a big deal.
Jackie, do me a favor before you go. Since I said I have a to-do list every day, why don't you ask Marjorie about her list and how she keeps her list? Go ahead, Jackie.
Okay.
I would love to hear it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Marjorie's disorganized, but I do make lists.
I find that impossible.
I do make lists.
Let me see your list. Hold it up.
I have a list of what I need to get at the store today.
Okay, that's one thing.
It's right in the corner of my notebook. You don't
and what
believe
does
me.
it say? I don't believe. I know it's not true.
Right there.
What does it say?
It's the boring things I need to get
Well,
at
what
the
do you
store.
need to get? Jackie wants to know. What do you need to get?
I need to get
lettuce,
bananas, bread, milk, cream, vegetables, paper towels, anything else
so
you'd
you
like
have a
to
great
know.
day,
Yeah,
great
it's
afternoon
very
ahead
exciting.
of
I'm going
you.
to
Jackie,
go to Trader
thank you.
Joe's after the show.
You know, Jackie and one of the texters made a very good point. We're
What?
talking about how depressing the reality is to return to work and whatever, even if you love work. Jackie made the point, and that texter made the point, that if you have little kids, the fact they go back to school is a time for great joy.
My
Do you remember
God.
that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so do I.
You're stuck
So
with the
obviously,
kids all day long
there
in
are
the
two
house.
kinds of people in this world, I guess you could say, and how they approach January. 877-301-8970. Let's go to Fall River, hometown of Marjorie Egan. Tony is on the phone.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, first-time caller, long-time listener. You guys are awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What's up?
So my suggestion is to take a Wednesday off now and again because it's a great time. The businesses are still open. You don't have to deal with like people on a Monday or people on a Friday. And it's just very relaxing, and it's a great idea to break up the week.
You know, can I tell you, I did that a few years ago. I'm so glad you did that. I had totally forgotten about that. And even though others would say, well, it's only a one-day holiday, the flip side is you end up having two-day work weeks, which is great, right?
You know,
Yeah, it's just fantastic.
You know, Tony, a lot of people in these stories talk about this.
Wednesdays?
Yeah, taking Wednesday off.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Well, they also suggest if you do a 3-day weekend that you should do it, take off Monday instead of Friday.
I heard you say that, yeah.
But then one of these stories says the unexpected pleasure of a Wednesday off, like a midweek weekend, because it's long enough to relax or take care of appointments, or short enough to get back into the work groove on Thursday and have the 2 days blanket on either side. Hey, Tony, did you ever go to Magoni's?
I have not, but
It just closed.
but I mean to.
Yeah,
Well,
it was.
it's too
It's
late.
done. It's closed. It closed. Yeah, the grand finale was New Year's Eve this year. You've always made fun of that
I
restaurant,
never made fun
Jim.
of it. Tony, that
Yes,
was
you
an
did.
excellent suggestion
And
for
it
your
was a
first
wonderful
call.
restaurant.
Thank
and
you.
The place was absolutely packed on
It
New Year's
was?
Eve night.
You
Everyone was
went on New
crying.
Year's Eve?
No, but my cousins all went. I heard the whole scoop. They were there till 2:00 in the morning.
I thought I heard that your cousins really went to the farewell
They had a
thing.
DJ. They were dancing and
Is that
everything.
really true?
Yep. It was a
But
great
I
night.
thought you said to me they're reopening under another name.
Well, they're going to. Yeah, but it's not going to be Magoni's anymore.
What's it going to be?
I don't know.
All I
you know,
hope is
and
when
on
they
the sign
reopen,
now,
they keep the Keno machines on the tables, because that was always something that I found really appealing there.
Well, I think the sign is Magoni's, MAGONI''S.
Yeah.
But now I think one of the MAG are still there.
The ONI is falling off.
They're not lit up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
I would
always a
say
bad sign.
I would say when half of your signage is disappeared, it's probably time.
But I tell you,
to move
it's on the water. They're going to put a big roof deck.
No, they're not.
Magoni's is on
that
the
really
water,
true?
Jim. Yeah.
I was in Magoni's like 30 years
It was
ago.
on the water then, too.
20 years ago. maybe.
Colby in Somerville. What do you
Was?
think, Colby? Yes.
Hi. Hello, Colby.
Hey.
Hey.
Glad to be calling in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to plus one what you were saying, Jim,
Yeah.
about folks not taking vacations.
Mm-hmm.
I think a healthy amount of detachment is really important for the overwhelming majority of us.
I agree with that.
No one's dying as a result of us not being at work.
That's a
Exactly
good
right.
point.
Yeah, and if people are being kind of uptight with you after you get back from vacation or whatever, I don't know. My feeling is that might just be in your head. And also, encourage other people to take vacations too. It's really important for us all to take a break. We often come back much more refreshed and more productive when we have had that time off.
Do you practice what you're preaching here, Colby? How do you live your life vis-a-vis vacations?
100%.
Wow.
So my company I work in the tech sector. A pretty common thing for the tech sector is to offer unlimited vacation.
Uh-huh.
Another very common thing in the tech sector is that nobody actually takes that vacation. I take as much as I possibly can. So I took about 6 weeks this past year in 2023. I have definitely gotten some weird looks when I tell people that, and I definitely have felt a little bit of shame of that. About that before, but my feeling is, people need to really kind of wake up from this, kind of Protestant work ethic that you are what you do, and your job is the only thing that defines you.
You sound really healthy. Hey, Colby, don't you feel that the fear that a lot of us had when we took long vacations about returning and sort of losing your place in line dissipated with working from home from COVID? Is that there's so much working from home that it's less of an issue? Is it less of an issue, or do you disagree?
Yeah, I feel there's definitely less of an issue that I notice. It's not as common that I feel like if I'm not showing face in front of my superiors that they're not going to see that. They're not going to see me putting in the long hours. I do think it depends on the company. My company happens to be very trusting of its employees. I know just from talking to my peers, there are other companies that are not that way at all. So I do also want to recognize, I'm very privileged in that regard.
Colby, before you go away, I wrote a piece for the Globe magazine a few years ago about exactly what you and Margie were talking about. People, how few vacation days we get in this country, we don't take them. And I also included in that piece some of the tech companies, there weren't that many then, offering unlimited vacation and people taking very few days for the fear you mentioned before. But you know, one or two, I can't remember the names of the companies, a couple of companies I think in Kendall Square did, they actually paid employees extra if they took days off over a certain threshold. Colby, that was a great call. Thanks.
Listen to this, and this relates to what Colby was saying. This is from the Wall Street Journal, saying that evidence shows that vacation days are good for your career. An Ernst & Young study showed every extra 10 hours of vacation was linked to an 8% improvement in your year-end performance reviews.
Really?
And another study found people who took more than 10 vacations a year were more likely to get a raise or bonus than those who took fewer days.
And the theory is you're more productive and feel better when you get back
or
rested.
That you're just more confident about your position. You're not so nervous that you never work. Now listen to this. This would really, I'm glad I don't live in Somerville. You know why?
Why?
Somerville schools don't go back until tomorrow.
Wow.
It's a teacher development day today.
That's tough.
Huh.
Okay, Marjorie's
I'm
opportunity to
suspicious.
trash the teachers union. Okay, Marjorie, enough.
Okay, we're going to talk with Trenny Casey from NBC Sports Boston up next about Bill Belichick and the Patriots and the biggest sports goofs of 2023. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We are streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brody and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by Sports Authority Trenny Casey. She's an anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a weekly contributor to BPR. Hello, Trenny, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys.
And
hello, Trenny Casey. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Did you guys enjoy your time off?
Oh, yes. I loved it. It was
yes,
great.
indeed.
I do love listening to the opening segment. Can I tell you what I do for New Year's?
Yeah.
I write myself a letter every year. So I write it on like the first week of January, and it's not like, it's like a little reflection, maybe a little like hopes, dreams, you know, like goals if I want to set something, and then I read it on New Year's Eve the following year, and then I like title them. I've been doing it since like 27. It's kind of funny to go back and like look at what you, like maybe what you wanted. Like in my letter from last year, towards the end of it, I said, you know, if we're lucky, we'll be able to buy a condo or a house in Vermont before the new year, and we close tomorrow or Thursday.
Whoa. In Vermont?
So like, no, we bought like a house, like a condo in the city, like a place to live permanently.
Okay.
So,
but congratulations.
So but it's kind of cool to like go back and look and see like something you wrote down that maybe you wanted to do or didn't want to do, or some of the things that you like said you wanted to focus more on that you didn't, that you can maybe try again. So that's my suggestion, rather than a resolution.
I should try that.
Yeah.
But then I get depressed about everything I didn't.
I did a variation on that last night. I just wrote down on a piece of paper 91 guilty verdicts. And let's see what happens.
I should have put that in my letter.
Next.
Put it into the universe.
Okay, well, the poor Patriots, it's a miserable season. We have some sound this morning from Bill Belichick, the coach of the Patriots. Of course, he was on the Greg Hill show on WEEI this morning, talking about, sort of, his future.
Thank you very much, Bill Belichick.
All right, you're welcome, Greg. You know, if I was going to do anything, I'd put it out there on, Twitter and my face so everybody could see it, but I don't.
You're saving it for the
If I don't do that, then I'll just keep it private.
I'm the same way. I post, if I'm going to do something, put it on my face.
My face.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's kind of the running joke with him, right? Like he likes to make fun of social media. But I do find his sort of self-deprecating humor to be interesting. And I can't figure out if this is an indication that he knows he's done. And so he's starting to sort of like, it's the last week, right? Like for him, it's the last week of the year, as opposed to the rest of us who did it a week prior. Their last game is Sunday against the Jets. It's quite conceivable that by the time I talk to you guys next Tuesday, Bill Belichick is no longer the head coach of the New England Patriots. I don't know if it'll happen that quickly, but it does, the way that he kind of talked about it today, he also went on, that wasn't the only comments he made. He also made a comment that said, I continue to coach these guys. I give it my all week in and week out. I'm here for these guys. I'm dedicated to them for right now. And it just kind of like, it just all made me think, does he know the end is near? And is he maybe a little more reflective than he normally would be? And it's me really, when that game ends, and I don't know if they'll win or lose, I hope they lose because it's better for their draft position. But, come Monday, I'm really curious to see if he is one of the coaches that is let go on what they typically call Black Monday.
Do people in your line of work think that Kraft and Belichick know what's happening and they're just keeping it to themselves?
So the reporting is that the two have not sat down and had a conversation yet. But there's other reporting that says Bill Belichick has been telling people around him that he thinks the end is near. So there has been some indication that they're going to move on from him. Tommy Curran is steadfast that the Krafts will part ways with Bill Belichick.
That's your colleague.
That's my colleague. He reported following the loss to the Colts in Germany. That was a big flagship game for the Krafts. They want to grow the game of football. Kraft really pushed for them to be in Germany. There were a ton of Patriots fans in Germany.
Yeah.
And the Patriots absolutely laid an egg against the Colts, and it was embarrassing.
I love that expression, laid an egg.
Against the Colts. And I guess following that, that's when Curran first reported that the Krafts had made up their mind. It was over. They were going to let it ride out and let the season finish with we're going to move on from Bill Belichick. Now, since then, and I think I sent you guys this article, Dan Shaughnessy wrote after, even though they lost to the Bills, they did make a push in the second half. They beat the Denver Broncos on the road. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. So they've had a little bit of a surge here towards the end of the year. But they stink. That's what Curran keeps telling me, because I'm saying I'm a little nervous that the Krafts will get sentimental, or they'll hear the fan push. They'll hear, some people saying, no, you can run it back. He is convicted that they will, he has conviction that they will stick to what they said before, that they know what's best for the organization. As difficult of a decision as it's going to be, is that they will move on from Bill Belichick.
Doesn't he have like one or two kids that works as
both of his kids? Not both of it. He has 3 children. Both of his sons work for him.
So what happens to them?
Takes them with him.
I'm sure they would go. I think it would be very awkward. And that's the other question, and that we'll be talking about, I think, for weeks on end on my show, on NBC Sports, and here with you guys. Like, who do they hire? Do they go to Gerard Mayo, who was the succession plan? And that's the other thing that everyone's talking about. There was a succession plan put into place last year. They gave Belichick sort of like a 2-year extension, and they also gave Gerard Mayo a 2-year extension that coincided with Belichick's at the end of the next season of 2024, so that Mayo would, kind of transition and be the new head coach come 2025. But now that's all kind of thrown up in the air, and it's like, well, if you fire Bill Belichick, do you want to bring back a guy who was on his staff? Now, the one thing for Gerard,
he can't fire. If this has got to be agreed upon, he cannot fire.
He might have
this guy.
You mean Bill Belichick?
Can you imagine Kraft holding a press conference saying, I fired Bill Belichick?
So I think in his mind, and he's always used this term, elegant solution. He would like
Kraft does?
Kraft does. He says, I would like an elegant solution to this. But I don't know that there is at this point an elegant solution, because again, people who are much closer to the Patriots than I am say they don't see Bill Belichick just going quietly. And I think in Robert Kraft's mind, the best thing that could possibly happen is they would trade Bill Belichick. So they would trade him to another team. They'd get a first or a second round pick in return. They'd bolster their draft capital, and Bill Belichick would go to some other team. But what if Bill is like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna do what Sean Payton did. You can pay me $25 million to sit on my behind next year and sit on ESPN or Fox or CBS or NBC and commentate on games, and I'll make the $25 million there. I'll make the $5 or $10 million they'll pay me at one of the networks for the year.
He makes $25 million coaching.
Well, we don't know for sure, but that's the rumor.
$25 million.
He is by far the highest paid head coach in all of professional sports, because he's head coach and general manager, right?
Well, I mean, by the way, some of these speaking of college,
I know.
I don't want to get into this. I happened to see by chance, because I was playing it on my couch yesterday, trying to relax to prepare for re-entry. I watched just the end by chance of the 2 semifinal games for the college football championship. 2 of the most exciting things I've ever seen.
Yeah, Michigan won in overtime against Alabama,
in overtime. And then this guy who I'd hardly heard of from Washington, who was like stunning. I mean, he's brilliant. And he's not even mentioned as one of the top three
quarterbacks. The 3 quarterbacks that everybody talks about is Caleb Williams from USC, Drake May from North Carolina, I believe.
He is.
And
the guy from LSU.
LSU, yes.
Who won the Heisman Trophy.
Yes, Jaden Daniels.
Whatever his name is.
So was everybody talking about Mac Jones at Alabama before in his last year in college before he came to the Patriots?
Yeah, I think he was a Heisman Trophy winner. If my memory serves, wasn't he?
I don't know. Maybe he was.
I might be wrong about that.
But he was a superstar quarterback in college.
They won the national championship, didn't they?
They did. Listen, when Mac Jones came out of college, people were talking about him being a Tom Brady-like quarterback because he was so smart. Like, he made such good decisions. But, and this, I think, is all... I think when the Crafts are looking at making the most difficult decision I think they've probably have had to make in their 30-year ownership of the Patriots, I think you have to take into consideration that since Tom Brady left, and really from the time that Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski moved on, there has been no offensive succession plan at any stage for this team. And the NFL is built on offense now. So if you look at it, like, you had Mac Jones, who under Josh McDaniels was a pretty good quarterback. I mean, listen, he wasn't great. He kind of faded down the stretch, but that's expected from a rookie quarterback in his first year. I know I'm getting a little inside football here, but it's like the way everything has been handled and the way that this team has played, like, it's hard to say. You can't, like, people are like, oh, you had one bad year or they won 5 games. No, it's actually been kind of a bad half decade. Really, the last 5 years, from Brady's last year to now, has been sort of a steady decline in particular on offense. And that is directly related to how Bill Belichick has built and coached this team.
Okay, one last pro football, sort of Patriots question, not really. Tom Brady. So next year he's supposed to be an analyst on Fox television broadcast
the Fox
for
NFL
$37 million. How can you do that, assuming he does, and own part of the Las Vegas Raiders football team? How can you do that?
I mean, I don't know how. I don't know.
He's got an interest. He's got a financial interest.
But I guess the way I would say is, all of these guys, especially someone who is so recently removed from the NFL, they all have interests still in the league, right? They all have buddies who still play, guys that they, were, I know Brady's like 100 years older than most of the football players now, but he's still, because he's so recently retired, like, I think it takes, and I think we're seeing this with Tony Romo, it takes a couple of years before guys can really truly become objective to what they're watching, because they become further and further removed from what they covered. And I would say, if anything, he may be harsher on Las Vegas and maybe take some responsibility. There's so much intermingling within the ranks of everybody. To me, it's not like he's covering the presidency, right? At the end of the day, he is still covering sports.
That's a very good point. We're talking to Trenny Casey. So the Washington Post had an interesting piece, the worst sports stories of the year. And when I was reading through the list, I originally decided
there were a lot of them.
The worst one was how Spain's Women's World Cup, all of the glory was taken away because of the coach and all that stuff, with a kissing that star player and lips kind of thing. But then I kept reading, and I think I concluded the worst sports story of the year was this. Do you pronounce it Charissa or Carissa? Carissa Thompson. She's the one.
Oh, it's the last one on the list, because it was probably it's the most risk. Well, I don't think it's in order. I think it's in chronological order.
Here she is. If you don't remember, she was on Pardon My Take podcast, admitting to making up her sideline reports.
I haven't been fired for saying it, but I'll say it again. I would make up the report sometimes because A, the coach wouldn't come out at halftime, or it was too late, and I was like, I didn't want to screw up the report, so I was like, I'm just going to make this up, because first of all, no coach is going to get mad if I say, hey, we need to stop hurting ourselves. We need to be better on third down. We need to stop turning the ball over.
Pressure the quarterback.
We need, exactly, and do a better job of getting off the field. Like, they're not going to correct me on that.
She still have a job?
She does still have a job. Neither Fox nor Prime Video has taken any action against her. I don't know what her contract status is. I don't know if they figured, who are we going to have? Who are we going to put in this role for both positions for the rest of the season? We'll just ride it out, and maybe her contract is up. Maybe it's an option year, and they decline to pick up the option. They decline to renew her contract. This bothered me because I was a sideline reporter. It's kind of the middle part of my career, and it's a really hard, thankless job. Like, you do a ton of work for the tiniest little, you have to hurry up and get anything you want to say into the broadcast within 15 to 20 seconds, right? And also, the sideline position is really sort of demeaned. It's looked at as a women's job. Yeah. There are male sideline reporters, don't get me wrong. But it's kind of, for a lot of young women, it's still seen as the only way to break into the business. And there were sideline reporters like Lisa Salters and Laura Oakman, who have been in the industry for a long time, who spoke publicly and were very angry about it. I think Andrea Kramer said a few things. It takes a job where you're already sort of seen as eye candy. Most of the women.
What were you a sideline reporter? What'd you do?
So I started, my first sideline gig was, I was the Pittsburgh Penguins and Pittsburgh Pirates, in-game, pregame, postgame, which that was my first foray into regional sports. And then I ended up doing some high school football. And then I went to the Milwaukee Brewers and the Milwaukee Bucks and did that position. And then I did some other I worked for college games for a year before ESPN and ABC merged. They hired a lot of freelance. So in my 20s, I was a college sideline reporter, and it's hard. You go in and you're flying into these games, and you're trying to get as much information and add something to the broadcast, and not feel like you're just this person who's on the. Again, you're just this, 9 times out of 10, some skinny little blonde on the sideline, just there because you want to find a husband. So
you say that those are overwhelmingly women. It's seen as a women's job, even though men do it. Are there? I'm trying to think. Other than the woman whose name I forgot, who does the Yankee broadcast, I think
Susan Waldman.
Susan Waldman has been doing it forever. Yes, who is amazing. Are there other women doing play-by-play or analysis on major male sports?
There are. Doris Burke is probably the next biggest. I would say she's actually the biggest name. So she's NBA on ESPN. She is fantastic. But I'll tell you, you watch a game when she's broadcasting, and what do you see? And not that we should listen to what people say on Twitter or X or whatever it is.
Or my
it's
face.
The cesspool of humanity usually. But unfortunately, all of the comments are always why do I have to listen to this woman's voice? Why do I have to listen to this woman's voice? Melanie Newman is a young woman who started in the minor leagues of baseball. In fact, worked for, I believe, when they were in I think the AA team or the AAA team for the Red Sox, when they were still in Pawtucket. Her name is Melanie Newman. She now does some play-by-play for the Baltimore Orioles. She's not there full-time, but she is part-time, fills in. Just the other day, I was watching my alma mater, Marquette, was on CBS, and they had a WNBA player as part of their college basketball analyst. It wasn't just all men. So there are more women who are doing it. It's just not as prevalent. Leah Hextall, she used to work here. She used to do some work. If you're a Bruins fan, you might remember her. Her family is kind of hockey royalty. She does some play-by-play for hockey, and her too, she just worked her way up. She literally would call games for free. She'd go up and she'd watch hockey games up in the rafters of a place, tape herself on her iPhone to teach herself, and then go sit with a hockey player who does play-by-play to have them critique it and get better and better. And so she's been doing more of that, but she also does still a lot of sidelines. That's just sort of how women are still seen.
Yeah, when you see these roundups after the games or between the games, it's always got 4 guys.
Always.
And the wildest suits. I mean, it's like a competition for who can have the craziest suit and tie on these.
I know.
In these whole things.
So can you explain something on a totally different front? We've talked about this a lot in the past. The PGA, the guy who runs the PGA, in the early
Monahan,
days,
right?
Yeah, Monahan. When the Saudi Golf Tour started, it was this. He was disparaging it every single day until he wasn't disparaging it anymore. And then I read a story that not only are they in negotiations, which we've discussed with you, over something with the Saudis.
Yes,
they're
PIM,
also in negotiations with some of the people involved in the Fenway. The John Henry, Tom Werner. What is it?
But also Whit Grossbeck, who is a part Celtics owner.
So can you explain simply what's going on?
So it seems like the PGA is trying to compete with Live Golf, but also join forces with Live Golf. So rather than be completely separate, they're trying to keep the two leagues separate, have some events together, but also bolster the PGA Tour so that guys can maybe play less and make more money. Because that's the draw of the Live tournament, right? So Jon Rahm, who just went from the PGA to Live, this is probably one of the biggest names since
he just won the Masters or
just
something,
won the
right?
Masters. Like Brooks Koepka went. I mean, I think they're paying him something like like $200, $300 million or something to come over to Live Golf. Well, the PGA doesn't do that. They don't pay you a set salary. You have to win in order to make money. You have to play and if you're like a middle of the road golfer, you have to play a lot of tournaments to make money, right, and get sponsors.
And you should pay to get into those tournaments too.
I think so. I think so. And a lot of times your sponsor, right, like it's taken care of by your agent gets you a sponsorship and they kind of like waive fees or whatever. You win enough. But for guys who are just trying to break in and make it on the tour, you're not guaranteed money. And so I think the PGA is trying to get more investors so that they can compete with Live. But what's gross about it is now they're bringing Live into the fold. So SSG, which is an arm of the Fenway Sports Group, which is trying to get into
which is John Henry,
John Henry, Tom Werner, and Wick Grossbeck on the SSG side. They're getting into this virtual golf thing that we've talked about, which has been pushed back because there was an accident at the construction of the indoor stadium. They're trying to get into that. They bought the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're looking to buy an NBA team, and now they're looking to invest in the PGA. And that monetary investment will hopefully push up the pool so that maybe they can offer more prize money, or maybe like a set salary for certain guys. I don't know how it'll all flush out, but that's their reasoning. They're saying that they're trying that by joining forces with all of these different entities, that they're trying to make it a better PGA. But I have a problem with, and I even have a problem with like SSG getting into bed with Live. Because if Fenway Sports Group is in a partnership with the PGA, the PIM, and the DP World Tour, which is the European World Tour, and SSG, those four entities are going to be putting money into one pot for this sort of super golf league. And that just means Fenway Sports Group is in bed with the Saudis. So to me, that's like how it's kind of a convoluted. It's not a straight line.
Yeah.
But
we
it's
may
not
have
that
had
curvy.
this discussion before. Jay Monahan, when originally the Saudi part of the Live Tour started, was literally talking about 9/11 and how disrespectful it was. So if Monahan was here, I don't know what his explanation is.
Before he did a complete 180.
Right. And now trying to quasi-merge or whatever, do something. If he were here right now and we say, you were citing the disgrace it was to 9/11, what did change? What would he say? I know, obviously, it changed money. But what would
he would probably avoid the question and say nothing has changed on that front, but we have to acknowledge the threat that Live poses to. He would talk in circles like I think all business people and politicians do when they need to do something uncomfortable to get to a means to an end. And that's what he would tell you, that the PGA cannot survive the way it is, and so unfortunately we have to join forces with Live Golf and the Saudi money. And we've talked about this before. It's going to be really interesting to see where else Saudi money starts to infiltrate, because it's also in talks for tennis. You've got it in talks for golf. There is some speculation that if the Jacksonville Jaguars ever come up for sale, that they could get into the NFL. Right now, NFL owners are like, no, we don't take foreign money. That's not the kind of, we're an American league. But, wait until the Saudis come in and say, we'll buy the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we won't ask for financing for a new stadium. We'll build $1 billion, stadium, and we'll host a Super Bowl, and suddenly you're, partying with sheiks in Jacksonville.
On that note, Happy New Year. It's great to see you, Trenny Casey.
Trenny Casey,
always happy to bring it.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Bring it up.
Bring that note. Bring the letter. Bring the note you wrote next week. Will you do that?
What, from my 2023?
I'd like to see what I'd like to hear that.
That's a good idea.
Thanks.
That's what we should do. We should write notes to ourselves. Try that next year, Jim.
And then you find it. I want to see you find it, Marjorie. That should be good.
We've been speaking with Trenny Casey. Yeah. She's anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Up next, a local woman, Sue O'Connell, joins us live here at the Boston Public Library. She's going to talk about naming names in the child sex predator Jeffrey Epstein case, and these swatting stuff that's going on, not only at the home of Marjorie Taylor Greene, but also our own Boston Mayor, Michelle Wu. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Tahira Amatul-Wadood is the executive director of CARE Massachusetts, and she tells GBH News that local Muslims are on edge. That's with CARE getting triple the usual number of calls to their helpline since the war started in October.
Everybody is nervous and deeply concerned for their safety, for their employment. But I am also optimistic because public opinion is changing. People's minds are open, and our young people, particularly our college students, are more vocal than ever.
Amatul-Wadood says the majority of calls to CARE's helpline have been related to the war in Gaza. In Boston, I'm Mark Hers, GBH News 89.7.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yeagan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Made it through an hour.
We did.
I mean, we did.
Wasn't easy.
How you feeling about that?
It
wasn't easy,
Back
actually.
in the saddle. Back in the saddle.
Now, our next guest has finally given in to the BPR juggernaut. We've been relentlessly, and some say crassly, calling her local woman for months on the show, following a brush with a coyote and a Globe headline that referred to her as a local woman. And I think our efforts are paying off. The moniker is finally sticking. That would be, of course, our media maven, Sue O'Connell. Sue is the co-publisher of Bay Windows of the South End News, co-host of NBC 10's Boston at Issue every Sunday at 11:30 following Meet the Press. She co-hosted the broadcast of First Night from City Hall. Sue O'Connell, it's great to see you.
Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, too.
Yes.
Can you please explain to people how the local woman issue finally, I don't even know what the verb is.
Busted out.
Finally busted out.
It's
Thank
become
you.
part of the mainstream now.
That's what I was trying to
So
say.
we got a holiday card in the mail, and my daughter Ruby was sitting on the couch, and she likes to open. She loves the holidays, so she gets to open all the cards.
Oh, that's nice.
And there it is. And she opened it up, if you're watching on YouTube, and she yelled, "Oh my God, come look at this!" And it was addressed to Ruby and local woman Sue O'Connell. So there you go. I feel like Santa.
so proud.
I feel like if my mail carrier just saw local woman, he would know to bring it to me.
We don't even need your name.
No, just that's me.
That
local
is,
woman.
I was so proud when I saw that.
That's very nice.
Good
Really,
job,
it was
Jim.
great.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
Congratulations.
That's very nice.
That's really a great moment for all
So
of us.
moving from the sweet, warm, and cozy to the really pretty sick and disgusting.
We could say we get action. I mean, a lot of people say we
get action.
don't. We do get action.
On the sweet, warm, and cozy
On
front.
local woman Sue O'Connell. Yes.
Apparently, there's the court documents that are naming Jeffrey Epstein. People may recall he was a notorious child sex abuser, sexual abuser, who killed himself in prison. But his associates, the names of some of these are going to be revealed. We don't know who they are, but Bill Clinton is supposedly one of the people on there.
Is that today? This is
it should come out today. I mean, part of it is there's a lot of caution that's being urged around this because from what some folks have reported, most of the names that are going to be on the list have already been in the court documents. There's not going to be anything, there may not be any bombshell moments here that folks are looking for. Also, the names of the victims may be in there. I mean, there's a whole bunch of layers of caution that folks are urging. And also, we don't know what it means if they're on the list. It doesn't necessarily mean that if
they had sex with 17-year-old girls.
Right, or even if, why they were on the plane or why they were on the island. So again, it's just, this continuing just vagueness of what happens. It'd be great if people who actually were involved in doing bad things came forward and said, yes, I did a bad thing, so we would stop speculating. But it is just this ongoing the scam that Jeffrey Epstein was able to kind of perpetrate on America regarding his ability to get these rich people and powerful people to do things is really astonishing. I just continue to be amazed at what he was able to do.
You know what I don't understand? I should know this, but I don't. How did he make all this money?
Well, that's the big question, because he was he
had an island.
Before he was a teacher. He was a math teacher at a private high school or a private university, and somehow he was able to cozy up to really wealthy people. I mean, a lot of the speculation is that he was able to blackmail people, and by the blackmailing, he was able to get the money, and he apparently was good at investing. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but he was able to keep blackmailing people to get more money so that he got more power and more money.
So, two things about Clinton. While Clinton is allegedly mentioned 50 times, he didn't. Everybody whose name is being released had an opportunity, according to the judge, to object. He didn't object, which obviously means there's nothing really damning, other than the fact that he took international flights, but obviously nothing to do with the most nauseating criminal behavior of Jeffrey Epstein, at least in these documents. The other thing, when you mentioned survivors' names possibly being listed, I'm assuming that they too had a right to challenge, and I assume if they challenged and didn't want their name released,
they wouldn't be released.
Their name wouldn't be released. Okay.
But we're just this is going to be one of those litmus tests, right? To how, when the names get released, how people react to what names are on them. I love the hypocrisy of people who are voting and supporting Donald Trump being all upset that Bill Clinton's name might be on this. You can be upset about both of them at the same time. This isn't an either or Republican or Democratic stance here. If you're upset about people taking advantage of other people, you should just be universally upset.
One last thing about this. We all know that Prince Andrew was sued by the 17-year-old woman who's now 40, I think. She had a lot of courage, I should say.
Tremendous.
And while, of course, Prince Andrew said he did not have sex with an underage woman, he did pay her £12 million in a settlement, which, to me...
And his late mother removed him from royal
that's what I was going to ask you.
duties.
Is he still hanging out with... I mean, he is...
Yeah, and Fergie has shown back up, his ex-wife.
Is that his former wife?
They have according to her, a great relationship as divorced parents together. And she showed up, I think, Marjorie, you probably were paying more attention to this than I was. Off we go on our royal tangent. But she showed up over the holidays next to him, which indicated to some royal watchers that she was subtly saying that, I support my ex-husband.
Yeah. And I can remember, the pimp is in jail for 20 years.
Yeah, she is.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah. But it's just an interestingly weird and perverted saga.
So let's move on to something else about the LGBTQ community. There was this report published by the University of California said that California, largest number of LGBTQ Americans, not a big surprise. Washington, D.C., greatest percentage, not a big surprise. The largest share of LGBTQ adults in the country is in the South. That's number one that surprised me. And the other thing is that young people, 18 to 24, 15.2% identify as members of the LGBTQ community, which I always heard the number was 10%.
Yeah.
So this is a slightly increasing number, which would seem to me means that it's easier to come out now, so people are more likely to come out when they're young.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of factors here. One is I think that the younger generation doesn't really care in many ways. So if I know a number of young people who will pick the Q or pick the unaffiliated. They're almost like Massachusetts voters. They don't want to be affiliated to any party. So I think that number of 15% might be just a little boosted by people who don't want to pick a team and want to support without not supporting. Also, the numbers of being able to be out. I don't think that the numbers have changed of how many LGBTQ people exist. It's just that now that we're comfortable self-identifying and saying that we are. And the South this is not new data. I mean, it's new data, but it's not new. The South has traditionally had more LGBTQ people percentage-wise than other areas of the country. And I don't know why that is, but it has.
What's your speculation?
I think it's just, I don't know. I don't know why it is. We'd have to call up some Southerners and ask them why there's more LGBTQ people down there. But I also thought it was interesting. Washington D.C. on this list had the highest percentage of 14%, which is also another interesting thing.
Were you involved? You were one of the 1 in 10 or whatever the hell the radio.
Yeah, the radio show 1 in 10 on FNX, which ran.
That was you,
Yeah,
right?
me and Keith Orr. Before that, Mary Breslauer and Michael Smith.
That's where I got the idea of 1 in 10.
Yeah, it was the Kinsey number.
Yeah,
the Kinsey number of like 1 in 10 people would engage, I think it was in behavior, in gay or lesbian, homosexual behavior.
Yeah.
And that's the number that people have often used. But again, these definitions are kind of mushy. So
what years was 1 in 10 on?
It was on from 1993 to 2006, I think. I think it was a great run.
Yeah, speaking of LGBTQ issues, it bears mentioning in light of the fact that we almost every week with you talk about some horrible legislation. When I was, I don't know what you call it, when I was president of the Legal Services Union, I lobbied in Washington. One of the fiercest opponents of legal services for the poor I ever had to lobby, he was on the Judiciary Committee, one of the staunchest conservatives I'd ever lobby was this guy, Congressman DeWine from Ohio, who is now Governor DeWine from Ohio, and he did something that was so counterintuitive in a Republican state with a rock-ribbed Republican governor and a Republican legislature. Can you share and explain if you can?
It's shocking, and it's also shocking how much sense it makes that it's so shocking,
totally
right?
agree.
So Governor Mike DeWine vetoed a bill last week that would ban gender-affirming care for trans minors and prevent trans girls from participating in girls' sports. Why is this such a big deal? Well, this is one of the wedge issues that the Republicans and conservatives are pushing forward, that if you vote for Democrats, you're going to have trans kids being turned into something against their will, or you're going to have men participating on girls' sports teams. And of course, the reason he gave for vetoing this Republican-forwarded bill is that it should be up to parents to decide what kind of and doctors, what kind of medical treatment their children should have. And he also cited, I thought, which was really deep, that he heard from parents who said their kids would have been dead had they not received gender-affirming care. So it's a logical answer. Right? You know, again, the number of trans people in the world and trans kids is tiny. Most doctors approach it with a lot of caution and make sure that they are treating the child for what the child has, not what they think it has. And parents need a lot of support in order to make these decisions. The last thing they need is the government telling them what they can and cannot do.
You know what the other thing is? When you read a lot of these fights about trans kids in sports, you know, if children who are young teens, 12, 13, believe that they're trans, and they can get these puberty blockers, which enable them to look more like the sex that they've chosen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a lifesaver for a lot of these kids.
And also, listen, to be clear, under 16 years of age, who cares who's on the team? Yeah. I mean, I coached a middle school soccer team. They literally could have been ants chasing a crumb on a field, for crying out loud. It's not like there's a high skill set here. And if you're in middle school, which I always love, and we've all certainly experienced, you go to like one of the kids' basketball games, the boys' basketball game, and there's some 6'2" bearded 8th grader playing. You know, we don't really know when the testosterone and all that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an even playing field anyway. So, you know, my opinion is until about 16 or so, who cares what team you're on? If you're an elite athlete, you know, that's a discussion that should be centered with women and trans athletes and everyone else. But just let people play.
Can we just down him for a second? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, while you said it's sane and compassionate, and almost your response is almost matter of fact. In this world, this is a big deal for a conservative Republican governor, again, to override his Republican legislature and do what we all consider to be the right thing.
And you know what the other thing is? All this freedom, liberty stuff that a lot of the GOP talk about. Yeah,
except for other people.
Is there anything more freedom taking away than telling a mother or father, oh, your state legislature is going to tell you what kind of medical care you can get for your child?
You know,
I think how is that free?
The thing about LGBT kid just most LGBTQ people are raised by straight people.
Correct.
Okay? 99.9% of us had straight parents. What are you doing to us to raise us to be trans or gay or lesbian, right? Nothing. It's just how it happens. So it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a socialist or a libertarian. Your kids are going to be who they are. And if they're having something that needs to be treated by a medical authority, I think reasonable Republicans, reasonable lawmakers, as in this case, Mike DeWine, are going to try and default to what the parents and the medical professionals.
Because it's not their business.
It's not their business, and it's not a political issue.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
Okay, so Sue O'Connell.
Yes.
One of the things I admire about you, I've sort of stepped back a little bit. I'm not doing television. I have an easier life, just doing the radio, which is actually quite great. You are everywhere. I mentioned you're doing... Have you ever appeared, we did Googling and we couldn't find it, but have you ever appeared on the Sexy Healthy Cooking Show?
I have. I got a really bad grease burn once because I believe you do it nude. Do you do it nude?
What is the Sexy Healthy Cooking Show?
A little sound. We want to hear the sound.
Well, let's have an explanation
Okay,
first
so there's this chancellor and his wife. Where is it? Let me find it.
Some Wisconsin school.
In Wisconsin. Hang on. We're so good at NBC 10. We do double-siding printing.
State University in Wisconsin.
Oh, there it is. Yes,
Okay,
University of Wisconsin.
What did he do again?
He and his wife have a cooking show, a pornographic cooking show, where they call it Sexy
Healthy
Cooking, and their name is Sexy Happy Couple.
What's the problem?
It's just that he's a chancellor of a university,
and
the university is upset that it's sending the wrong message, that the chancellor and his wife are cooking nude and have made these videos public, and I think
they're
they're
also
probably
having
making some money.
sex, I believe.
Yeah,
on
that
video.
goes without saying.
Yeah.
So they're making pornographic videos.
Yes, they are.
So here is a little sound, as Marjorie said, from the Sexy Healthy Cooking Show. By the way, it's available on YouTube, which is pretty
Watch
exciting.
it right now.
Here's a little bit from the stars, the players.
We are vegans, which means we eat a plant-based diet.
We also like to have a guest star from the adult entertainment industry to talk a little bit about food and lifestyle and other topics that come up.
The wonderful Lauren Phillips. Hey. Will Pounder. Sophie Marie.
Damon Dice.
She's Carmen.
And he's Joe.
And we are
the Sexy Happy Couple.
One of their guests is Will Pounder.
Why not?
No, why can't he be the chancellor? By the way, she works in the chancellor's office.
Yes,
the wife.
as well.
She's
Joe
an
Gow was
associate.
So there's a couple of issues here. Like he's trying to make this First Amendment case that he should be able to do. They're not doing anything illegal.
No.
And we should be very clear about that. And as you know, I'm not about kink shaming, and they seem to be living the life that they want to live, and good for them. And I'm sure the videos they're happy. He's 63. I'm sure you want to see both of these couples naked to see how their cooking does, if it really helps you. But he does represent the University of Wisconsin. And he's saying, my First Amendment right, you can't fire me for making these. Well, guess what? You don't have a First Amendment right where you work.
No.
Right? The worker, your employer tells you all the time what you can and cannot do. And I think it's just really a big money grab here. I think he's close to retirement, and we're talking about it, and we're, face it, you're all going to go watch this video, right? You're all going to go on YouTube and see if you can see what the heck this is.
By the way, nobody's listening to our show anymore as a result.
They've all left.
Do you know that when he was chancellor, this guy's history, and I'm embarrassed I know this much, he paid thousands of dollars from some fund, public money from the university, to have a porn star speaking at the school.
Listen, I know a lot of people who work in the sex industry, and as I always say, none of us want our little boys or little girls to grow up being entertainers, but they do get to be porn stars. There's never porn actors. They're always porn stars.
That's a very good point, by the way.
And at the same time, I also don't want my kid playing football. So, I think it's a legitimate way to make a living if you're okay with it. But again, if your company thinks it doesn't match their morals, and as long as you're not legislating against things, again, the hypocrisy part of it.
You mentioned don't play football. My understanding, even though I haven't watched it, you don't get a concussion on the Sexy Healthy Cooking Show either.
You can get a grease burn, though. You don't want to be cooking grease
I know
naked.
I've cited this about 10,000 times on the show, but of the 24 years we've been on the radio, one of the most startling things I ever learned What's the name of the guy who is the butcher of Broadway who was with us? Is now executive producer of Veep, and Frank
Rich.
Frank Rich. Frank Rich was on with us maybe 15 years ago after he had written a front page story in the New York Times Magazine saying, this is 15 years ago when the internet was just in its infancy, to use that expression, that the amount of money spent on pornography in this country exceeded the total of the whole entertainment industry, the whole
sports industry,
all sports combined. And that, again, that was pre-internet. And
do you know why we had VHS tapes instead of beta tapes?
No.
So remember in the olden days we had the VHS tapes and you had a beta tape, right? And the beta was a thicker tape. It was a much higher quality experience. They cost about the same to produce.
I remember those,
a VHS or a beta tape, and that for a while they were competing sources. But the porn industry decided to go with VHS, and that's why we all had VHS. The amount of money that is spent in the adult entertainment world, there's also, I've been unable to really fact check this, but someone told me that after the Guggenheim Bible was printed, the next thing that was printed was a book of erotica to pay for the Bible. So, you know, I mean, we can pretend it doesn't exist. When I worked at the Boston Phoenix, I was in the sales department. Of course, we had the
last page.
We had the adult section. We actually had a pull-out section.
That's right.
That contributed 30% of our revenue. 30% of our revenue came from the adult section. And I would always crack up because people would complain about it when I was trying to sell other nightclub ads. I'm like, who do you think is reading this right now? So
yeah. Well, we talked a lot about the fact when Maura Healey was Attorney General, talked about how at 2 o'clock in the
This is incredible.
2 o'clock in the what was it, 10,000 people had made calls from Boston trying to set up their rendezvous with prostitutes on their way home from work.
She told us that when she was Attorney
There's
General.
a lot of people.
Hey, before you go, could you explain? People have heard the term a lot. I'm not sure people know what swatting is.
Yeah.
And while there's a lot of national press around Marjorie Taylor Greene's being the victim
and
of
the Maine
swatting.
Secretary of State as well.
Oh, Bellows.
Bellows was also swatted.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But also Mayor Wu experienced this in the last week too. Explain to people what it is and how seriously law enforcement is taking what is a really dangerous thing.
Yeah, everybody, regardless of your point of view or your politics, should be against swatting. It is an incredibly dangerous thing. It's happened to a number of high-profile people, and it's been happening more and more recently. Someone makes a 911 call and says that your house is under some sort of dangerous threat, whether or not they say there's a bomb at the house or someone is about to murder someone, like the most serious threat that they can call in, and they are able to mask their 911 call in all the ways that people can figure out how to do that. Then, of course, there's an immediate police response. The SWAT team, as you can imagine, shows up, and the person in the house has no idea what's happening because nothing is happening. They didn't call 911. And it's dangerous for a number of reasons. One, because the person who called could end up, the person who's in the house could end up being shot or hurt by the police responding. The police can get hurt by responding because they have to take every threat seriously. And when it's someone like a Mayor Michelle Wu or Secretary of State Bellows or a Marjorie Taylor Greene or any of the other people this has happened to, it of course has a higher level of response because they're public officials.
Exactly.
And the police and law enforcement find this horrific. And anyone who celebrates this happening to someone is just an awful, terrible person who is not only putting people in harm and the families of the people who live in their homes, but also law enforcement. You know, this is like the most dangerous thing. Domestic violence issues and responding to homes where there's violence that are happening is the most dangerous time for police, and it's just an awful thing.
You know, the other thing is, Michelle Wu has talked a lot about her mother who's mentally ill, and she's got 2 small children in the house. She says that there have been a handful of these swatting incidents since she was sworn in as mayor. So not only did she have people outside her house at 7 o'clock in the morning until they changed it till 9, you know, screaming and yelling, and in some cases comparing her to Nazis and stuff. Then this is going on in her little house in Rosendale.
I also want to point out that it's quite obvious. It more often happens to women who are elected officials than it does to men, right? And I can guarantee the swatting thing has been happening for a long time. It's not new. But it never happened to Marty Walsh. It never happened to Tom Menino. It never happened to Charlie Baker. And I know that we're living in a different time where violence, not to get all negative about the beginning of the year, but I'm dreading this year in many ways. And the level of violence that could happen. There was just an incident at the Colorado Supreme Court, obviously with the factors of the election and disqualifying Trump from the ballot. But it more often happens to women who are elected officials than it does to men.
That's a great point.
And to pretend that you disagree with Michelle Wu's policy, so therefore we're going to be more aggressive in the way that we approach her is just misogynistic, and there's no doubt about it. And anyone who can't disagree with her policy without calling her a communist or bringing in her gender or anything like that is just not worth listening to.
Local woman Sue O'Connell, Happy New Year. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Sue O'Connell.
Thank you.
Very much for being here, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We've been speaking with Sue O'Connell, co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, co-host of NBC 10 Boston's At Issue every Sunday at 11:30, following Meet the Press, which is on Channel 10 on most providers around here. Thanks again to Sue O'Connell. Up next, the Isabella Stewart Garden Museum is featuring a new exhibit, Steve McQueen's Lynching Tree. Co-curators Lee Pelton and Peggy Foldman join us to talk about this haunting but disturbing memorial to the murder of countless Black Americans. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. While book bans and curriculum savaging spreads through America, a new exhibit at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum will offer an unflinching look at the stark reality of the American experience. Lynching Tree by Steve McQueen is on exhibit later this month at the Gardner, January 20th to February 4th. February 4th, excuse me. We're joined now by the co-curators of the exhibit. Lee Pelton, he's president of the Boston Foundation, a monthly guest here on Boston Public Radio. Peggy Fogelman is director of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Peggy, great to meet you. Lee, great to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much. I have this cooking show I want to talk to you about.
But I'm excuse me.
Oh,
it's quite the segue.
It's quite the segue. I know.
That's what we do for a living, Peggy. Uncomfortable segues is what we do.
So, well, this is an uncomfortable segue too, because we're going from this weird, odd cooking show to talking about Lynching Tree. Lee Pelton, you wrote a terrific essay about going down to the Yale Center for British Art, I guess it would be almost 2 years ago now, and seeing this. And do you mind if I mention a little bit what you said in this essay?
Sure, please.
You talked about that you were in this, in a single bench in this room, 10 or 12 feet in front of Lynching Tree, all alone. And you said you sat there for several minutes, my mind racing to keep up and understand what was in front of me. Eventually, I was able to comprehend with a sense of immediacy the unimaginable truths buried beneath, now invisible, but not forgotten. the truth of what I was witnessing. You could hear, see, taste, and smell the horror, the shock of what had taken place here. And you thought of your great-grandparents, the son and daughter of enslaved parents, and you thought of civil rights leaders, and you thought of black people who lived in this terror. So tell us what Lynching Tree is all about.
Well, thank you for reading some of that piece. It was a incredibly moving, emotional experience for me, as I sat there with the photograph, which is in a light box, which illumines, and in some ways it emphasizes the tree, large oak tree. It's gnarled and branches and leaves on the ground. And so as you said, I sat there in silence trying to figure out what I was looking at. And then I realized, in fact, what I was looking at over a period of time, a place where something horrific and awful and really a stain on our nation had occurred there, that people had been lynched there, and maybe even the bumps in the below the tree were unmarked graves and so on. I was really overcome with grief and kind of horrific pain. And so what it represented for me is the way in which the history, particularly of black Americans, is hidden. And you have to look far and deep to find the truth of the black American experience. And so that's what it meant to me, and then had this conversation with Peggy, and here we are, and she can talk to you about how.
Why'd you think of her? By the way, if people recognize the name Steve McQueen, 12 Years a Slave, which I'm sure most of you have either heard of or seen, was his film.
And there's a scene of the boy watching the two teenage boys being lynched.
Why'd you think of Peggy and the gardener after that experience, Lee Pelton?
Well, one, because the experience was so intimate, and it was in an intimate space. And I thought the gardener was the best place to sort of recreate the experience that I had with its intimacy. It has a number of intimate settings, and Peggy can talk about that.
Yeah.
And previous to that, I had attended a really important panel discussion around black landscapes.
It was called Black Landscapes Matter.
Right, and in which this whole topic of American experiences being hidden within the landscape and memory.
Why'd you decide this is right for you, Peggy? Particularly on short notice. Lee makes the point in his essay that this is a much shorter lead time than you're used to with new exhibits.
That's right. We have 3 seasons of exhibitions during the year, and usually they're planned 3 to 5 years in advance. So there are 3 reasons why, when Lee approached me, I thought the gardener was the perfect place. One is because it's a place that really privileges the kind of emotional response that Lee is describing. It's a place of intimacy. It's a place that really leaves itself open for personal interpretation. And this is a work that each of us has to grapple with in our own personal way. Secondly, this is a continuation of the kind of work that the gardener has been doing over the past few years. Our exhibitions are built on the premise that art has something really important to say about the issues that face us today. That's both historical and contemporary art. And so all of our exhibition programs try to link historic art, contemporary art, and the issues in our own society that we can grapple with through art. And then the final thing is, if you come to the gardener, you will see that in the historic building, one of the first big wow moments is the courtyard. This is a courtyard that's blooming all year round, and it is the heart and soul right at the center. So the gardener already connects art, history, and nature in a very intimate way that speaks to the way that McQueen uses this very beautiful image of a landscape to actually drive home those hard truths of what scars of history that landscape can
Peggy
hold.
Fogelman, can you describe how this is going to be displayed and how it's not going to be displayed at the request of Mr. McQueen? I mean, it by itself is what I'm talking about.
That's right. This is only the second time in an American museum that it will be displayed. Yale was the first. And the artist prefers that it be displayed on its own. So it will be in what we call the Fenway Gallery, which is really proximate, right off the courtyard itself. And it will be alone at the end of that gallery in a very neutral setting with fairly low lighting because the image itself is illuminated. So it really, all the light comes from the image itself.
Starting February 20th, I should say.
And you know what I thought, I mean, I'm not an artist, but just looking at the pictures of this tree, it's a haunted tree. It's really amazingly scary.
Once you know the title.
We're
right?
about
Once
to
you know the
post
title,
a photo.
but
There
even,
it is right there.
Even before you know, you just look at this and you get a very ominous feeling.
And the interesting thing is he's burned out the sky, so it's a long exposure. So the sky, actually, it's not a blue sky.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit of an ominous, very illuminated gray sky.
We're talking to Peggy Fogelman, who runs the Gardner, Lee Pelton runs the Boston Foundation. They're co-curators of this exhibit, January 20th, February 4th, of Lynching Tree by Steve McQueen. Lee Pelton, it's not called The Lynching Tree. It's called Lynching Tree. Why?
Well, my view is that because it's not a particularized moment or an event. It's really he wanted to sort of place it in a kind of universal history of the American experience. So that article, THE, is missing from that. I should also say that one of the reasons I was attracted to the Gardner, in addition to working with Peggy, which has been just a delight, was because I used to go to the Gardner 1,000 years ago when I was a graduate student, and you could go into that courtyard and you could have lunch, bring your own lunch and listen to a nice concerti. And so I wanted, one of the attractions was to have this landscape, the lynching tree, having a kind of conversation, as they say, with the courtyard. And so that was also an attraction for me.
Can you explain, I think indirectly, when we were talking before about the short lead time that causes this to be exhibited, explain the next thing, which is it's a 2-week exhibit, which is relatively short. Is that a function of the fact that it is on such short lead time?
It is. And so we had a choice, right? We could wait 5 years and give it the normal exhibition full run, which is 3 months, or we could do it now and have a shorter run. And it seemed to both of us really important to do it now, really urgent, given that it's the 10-year anniversary of Steve McQueen's Academy Award for 12 Years a Slave. It's the 50th anniversary of the busing crisis in Boston. And we're in a context where this history is actively being suppressed through book bans and, curricular legislation.
What are the dates? I'm just wondering what the dates are, those 2-week dates.
January 20th, February 4th.
Thank you very much.
That's why I'm here.
Thank you, Jim.
My pleasure. Is Boston ready for this? I mean, I know the answer will be, of course it is. I think it will be. But I remember, how many years ago was Steve Locke's auction block at Faneuil Hall supposed to be built, and then all of a sudden that disappeared, and he had to leave town with this project, which obviously was going to address issues of slavery and Faneuil's connection to slavery.
Yeah, the auction block memorial was going to be at Faneuil Hall, and it was going to be at 98.7, like a body would be reminding that that's where slaves were auctioned off at Faneuil Hall.
98.6.
98.6, excuse
exactly.
me.
So Boston in 2023, I assume there's going to be colossal demand for this. Is this, you must think it's the perfect or the right time for this.
Well, I do. And, again, it's about truth-telling. Whether or not people are ready for it, I'm not sure how to answer that question, because I think, a variety of people are going to have different responses to it. Some will have the kind of response that I had, which was very deeply emotional and personal kind of response. I think others may be not want to, they don't want to confront the truth that lies within the lynching tree. So we'll see. But I think it's something that it's not only about remembrance, but it's also about confronting some really ugly and horrific truths in this nation.
Well, for a lot of people, it's also about learning, I would assume. I mean, that's one of the reasons museums exist, is, I assume, to spark further thought. My guess is the average person listening to the show does not know. What was the number? 4,500 lynchings in this country from 1870-something to 1950. I think most people either believe or like to believe that's in our more distant past. So the hope is that even before confronting some painful truths, they'll learn about some painful truths, Peggy Fogelman.
Exactly, and that we'll begin to be more aware of what has happened, what our history has been that brought us to where we are today, and begin to reflect on that. And that's the only way we can move forward, really, is reflecting on how did we get here. And I should just mention that we are really focused on our local community for this exhibit, and we are having special community viewings. We've reached out to a lot of Black organizations in Boston to have private viewings during non-public hours, as well as being open to the public.
I assume this is going to be a timed ticket event thing, too, because is it or is it not?
The Gardner, our general admission is timed anyway, and the best way to secure your spot is to get a timed ticket online.
Did you ever do anything like this? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say again, it's soon, January 20th to the 4th of February, as you said. So if you want to get on this very quickly, if you want to get in.
But let me say something about lynching. It's an act of terrorism.
Yeah.
It has been. And that was its purpose. It was these were very public spectacles, with large groups of people. White people would bring their families and their children, and there'd be thousands of people watching these lynchings. And the lynchings were not just hangings, but you would take souvenirs of flesh from these lynchings, and just unimaginably horrific. One instance where a woman, her husband was lynched the day before, then they lynched her, hung her upside down. She was brutalized. She was pregnant. And they cut open her stomach and let her unborn baby fall to the ground. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. This is, this is not just about hanging people from a tree, as awful that is, but it was meant to terrorize, and it was a public spectacle. It was a way to enforce Jim Crow laws, and also a way to reinforce the provenance of white supremacy.
Right.
That's what this is about.
How many people were in the room at Yale when you saw the photograph?
2.
What did that do for you? What did that do to you? I mean, what was that experience like? Marjorie described some of it from your piece, but what was it like for you?
It was deeply moving. And as I said, I mean, I'm sitting there in front of this about 10 or 12 feet away on a bench. There's nothing else in the room. Once I began to understand what I was actually, or I could imagine what was actually in front of me, I cried. And really, at the end, in very convulsive sobbing. And I couldn't stop. And the docent, who I think I'm probably not the only person who has this experience, brought me a box of tissues, tapped me on the shoulder, brought me a box of tissues, and I said, thank you.
Talking to Lee Pelton and Peggy Fogelman again, the exhibition of Lynching Tree will be available starting January 20th, February 4th. What's the web? We haven't even given what's the website to get tickets for this thing?
GardnerMuseum.org.
That's GardnerMuseum.org.
I don't know if you had any strong feelings about it, but Janae Osterholt wrote a great piece about the slave monument at Faneuil Hall, saying the city was robbed, basically. It became a dispute about public influence and input and all that kind of thing. But the idea, as I said before, was this auction block at Faneuil Hall, and to remember that slaves were sold there, and to have the floor heated up to the temperature of the body. What do you think of that? Should we have had that? Would that have been something that would have been, I don't know, part of that cruel revelation for people in Boston too? Just going to Faneuil Hall to get some cotton candy and coffee and pizza?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, for me, what was so powerful about this piece was the intimacy.
Yeah.
And that it was not in competition with any other exhibitions or any other pieces of art. And for me, I would prefer to be in some, not in a public space, but in some private space where I can, really tap into and express my emotional, experience.
Did you have any feelings about that?
Well, the only thing I would say, and I don't want to comment on, the public controversy over the work. What I will say is that Steve Locke is a great artist. He was an artist in residence at the Gardner Museum. He did a brilliant piece for our facade. Our facade is a commissioned work.
Right?
Yes.
3 Grays for Freddie. He is brilliant at using the vocabulary of abstract art to convey very profound meaning, which the auction block would have done. And, that's an abstraction that conveys the deepest, most disturbing meaning about this, about that place and how it functions. So I will say that I think it would have been a great work of art. That's
that was part of the thing, that he seemed like such a great guy. I remember talking to him about this when this was going to happen, and I just felt bad for him personally as well.
And I should also, the auction block was a public experience, so that I think that
you've done this kind of thing before. You're sort of a Renaissance man kind of guy there, Lee Belton.
He is.
You've done this co-curating.
Did you major in English or something?
No,
What are you, like a Chaucer expert or something like that? Aren't you?
Chaucer, isn't it Chaucer we learned in college?
It's not Chaucer?
In my course, they told me it was
I don't know.
Chaucer.
So can I just say, Lee, having being a scholar of English literature, is an expert at interpreting texts. And if we think of a work of art as a visual text, it makes great sense that Lee would be a co-curator on this show.
So when this Boston Foundation thing dries up, Peggy, you got a place for him at the Gardner? You never know.
Well, hopefully it's the start of an ongoing,
By the way,
partnership.
We haven't mentioned, I don't think we've mentioned the wonderful new outdoor dining room, whatever you got there, the all glassed in, you can sit outside now, and
it's beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
It's a little cold to sit outside right now.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
but come back in the spring.
Okay.
But we have indoor dining.
Once again, lynching tree at the Gardner, January 20th to February 4th. We have 2 minutes left. Can we change gears and just have you for a second comment on something?
Yes,
what do you want to say?
Well, but what about would you recommend that people who want to go see this should sign up now? I would think it because it's getting kind of crowded.
So we release tickets online 2 weeks in advance. And let me just qualify, this exhibit itself is not time ticket. It's time ticket to the whole museum.
I see.
But there is a capacity limit within that gallery space because it's a small gallery space, and we want to maintain the intimacy. But so you can wander the whole museum. Once you come in, you can stay as long as you want and just, come into that particular gallery.
So January 6th would be the start, I guess, right?
January 6th.
Yeah, okay.
So it's changing gears just for the last 90 seconds there, Lee Pelton. I hope, because first of all, you're the only regular former university president on our show, and we've also talked about the Claudine Gay thing with you. I just wanted to get your quick reaction to what my major reaction is to the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks since we spoke to you about the Claudine Gay thing. I have never seen a smart institution be so relentlessly attacked, something rightly, something wrongly, with absolutely no public response to anything. It's basically, to me, and again, you can have any position you want on gay or Harvard's handling of this. It's basically their attitude seems to be, beat me as long as you want. I will say nothing, and essentially you'll get one half of the story. You used to run place where you had some heat from time to time, maybe not on this.
I did. And
what do you think of that? What do you think of Harvard's, and you also have a Harvard connection, what do you think of their, at least from my perspective, total absence of defense other than that one statement from the Harvard Corporation, which was delayed in defense of gay?
So let me say, there are two governing boards at Harvard. One is the Harvard Overseers, of which I was a member, and the corporation, which is where really the power rests. And I would have preferred that Harvard would have done what MIT did with Sally Kornbluth, which was to have a full-throated expression of support for her early on in the process. But Harvard moves with, if I can use this famous judicial phrase, with deliberate speed. And so that's where
it moves with no speed. And one last thing. Again, I don't care what someone's position is on gay. It seems to me if I were in a position like that and being relentlessly attacked, we also haven't heard from her. Yeah. I mean, other than an occasional interview, one or two with the Crimson, which should be your first vehicle. It's obviously the student newspaper. Why is Claudine Gay not talking to the world?
She's incredibly vulnerable. I mean, whatever she says is going to be, it's going to be torn apart and analyzed.
Is that worse than this?
Well, I don't know, but it's going to. It could, in fact, bring out even more vitriol and attacks against her. She is working in cooperation with the corporation and and vice versa. So we'll hear something sooner or later.
Fair enough. Peggy, it was great to have you here. We're really excited about what you're doing. And Lee, congratulations.
Thank you very,
on this
very
too.
much.
It's terrific.
We have been speaking with Lee Pelton, president of the Boston Foundation, Peggy Fogelman, director of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Steve McQueen lynching tree will be on view at the Gardner Museum from January 20th through February 4th. Tickets are available at gardnermuseum.org, but they won't be available until January 6th. That's 2 weeks before the exhibit opens. Thank you again for coming in. Coming up, Carol Rose of the American Civil Liberties Union. She's going to talk about the big issues coming up this year: abortion, voting rights, elections, etc. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live at the Boston Public Library. Streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by Carol Rose. She's the executive director of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. She joins us monthly. Carol, Happy New Year. Nice to see you.
Happy New Year. Great to be here.
Great to talk to you again, Carol. So You outlined for us 3 big issues that the court's going to be dealing with this year, and you are going to be dealing with this year: abortion, voting rights, and anti-LGBTQ censorship. So let's start with abortion access.
Yeah.
Mifepristone, Supreme Court hearing. What's going to
I just
happen?
want to say this is a huge year for our democracy, as we all know. And I think these are really important issues that we pay attention to, because they're really fundamental to our bodily integrity. So there's a case that's going to be coming up in the U.S. Supreme Court yet again. On December 13th, the court announced it was going to hear a case known as the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine versus the FDA. And that's going to have pretty serious impact on people's access to abortion, particularly medical abortion, with the drug mifepristone, which, by the way, I just want to say is one of the safest drugs out there. It's safer than Viagra, just saying.
It's been on the market 20 plus years.
Yeah, it's been on the market 20 years. And there was an effort with the trial court judge, a Trump-appointed trial court judge down in Texas, ruled, we're going to outlaw it. We're going to say the FDA can't approve it. And then the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which was the appellate court down there in Texas, Oklahoma area, basically said, no, you can't go all the way back to 2000 with the FDA approval. You're too late. But you can go back to 2016, 2017, which would severely restrict access to medical abortion. So the court put a stay on that. So just so everybody knows, abortion is still accessible here in Massachusetts, so people just need to know that. But depending on how the court rules, that might change this year, and we're paying a lot of attention at the ACLU about it.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because Maura Healey has gone out of her way, I think here, but elsewhere too, to say we've got a 2-year stockpile of mifepristone, even if it's banned. But to be clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is if the court were to rule against the availability of this drug, even states that are wildly and passionately pro-choice would be subject to that ruling too, once the 2 years of supply run out.
That's correct. And not only that, think about the havoc that would wreak on the whole drug industry, which on the pharmaceutical industry, because we know that here in Massachusetts, our economy is really entwined with drug development, and it takes years to get FDA approval. If a court could come in and reverse FDA approval 20 years later or even 5 years later, that's nuts. And it would just really wreak havoc for our whole medical system. So abortion rights clearly are at stake, but so are a lot of other healthcare options for people. And we hope that the court will not do the wrong thing.
Let me ask you you're both lawyers, I'm not a lawyer, so maybe this is a stupid question, but you talked about bodily integrity. Women have no more bodily integrity in the United States of America. Only men have bodily integrity. So why isn't there some class action suit or something? Well, I mean, it's just outrageous to me that women have basically lost their bodily integrity.
Right. Well, and I think the thing, Marjorie, that we should be talking about is going back to the Equal Rights Amendment, right, and restoring that. We still don't have equal rights technically under the law.
That's right.
And so I think it's really important that as we go forward in the coming year, that we don't just play defense. There's a lot of fear and anxiety about, extremists taking over the government, and I share that fear and anxiety. But I think the best way forward is to have a good offense, not just to play defense, but to push forward on these equal rights, to push forward on issues of bodily integrity and bodily autonomy. And I think we can do that. And Massachusetts has a unique role to play in doing that because we have leaders who are poised and ready to do it with us.
There's the politics of this, too, that I think would be much better, frankly, for Joe Biden or the Supreme Court to get rid of mifepristone than it would be if they didn't, because abortion is a very...
Right. I mean, ironically, it could be the best thing that ever happened is to have a bad ruling. I mean, what we've seen, Marjorie, to your point, is that in every instance when access to abortion care, and it's also miscarriage care, by the way, is threatened, or when it goes to the ballot, people vote that they want to have that, whether we're talking about Kansas or Ohio or Michigan and Kentucky, all the places where it's come to a ballot, it's overwhelmingly people show that they support it because it's just common sense health care. And this politicization of our bodies, if you would, really needs to stop. And we need to call it out and call it for what it is. And I think most reasonable people are going to join in that.
Before you continue for one second, our timing is off by about 10 minutes. The Boston Globe is reporting that Claudine Gay, president of Harvard, is resigning.
Oh, okay.
So, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the other thing in terms of the bodily integrity thing, that in the United States of America, a woman does not have to face a serious threat to her health or her future fertility. In a lot of these states, she's got to be at death's door. She's got to be, suffering from a massive bodily infection or something. So I guess I just don't understand how that can stand. How the two genders have two totally different. I mean,
I agree with you.
Yeah,
and it shouldn't stand. And I think that's why voting rights. We were talking about the various.
But where's
things that
the
are
remedy
important.
for that besides the Equal Rights Amendment? Is there no remedy?
Well, no. I mean, I think under law we can go through and try to argue for that. But this court is an extremist court.
Yeah.
This court is an ideological court, and so they're not you're using logic. Right, which is
How
a
can
wonderful
Clarence
thing.
Thomas not recuse himself in a case involving Donald Trump when his wife was involved in the insurrection?
Exactly.
But that's,
I mean, they don't care
to
about
me,
the damn
but
law.
that to me is different than what just happened in Texas, where a woman who very
Almost
much wanted
died.
this child and was almost at death's door, and the other woman who went into septic shock, which kills you because she was forced to carry around a dead fetus, and a fetus that would not have survived. So I just don't get how that can stand.
Ideology. It's not law. I mean, it's an ideologically driven court. Look at the decisions.
It's an ideologically driven court. It's not a court that you can use logic and reasoning with. It's really an ideological court. You'll see, even for the ACLU, I mean, we're in the front of the Supreme Court more than any other organization except for the Department of Justice, and we're having to figure out, well, what would be an originalist argument that we might be able to make in each circumstances, because that's where we're at. And this is why I think we need to do some kind of a court reform, whether it's expanding the court or something else. But the most important thing is that we vote. That's the most important thing that we can do, and each and every one of us who has the ability to vote should exercise their franchise, irrespective of where.
Okay, so voting rights is second on your list that Marjorie started before. This, to me, there is a case that may end up in the Supreme Court where there will be an issue about whether or not the Voting Rights Act can even be enforced by individuals, meaning individuals who feel that their rights under the Voting Rights Act were violated may not have standing to sue. It sounds like a Saturday Night Live routine. Is that?
It's yet another example, Jim, of this kind of extremist ideology that seems to be taking over the U.S. Supreme Court and many of the courts that are Trump-appointed court judges. And I'm saying that the ACLU is nonpartisan, but we really have seen a change here. So what they're trying to do is to say that there isn't I think it's out of Arkansas, that there's no private right of action. So when there's a law that's passed, sometimes it's self-executing, sometimes it's not. But who gets to bring a lawsuit, right? I can't bring a lawsuit just because your rights were violated, like only you can do that. But then the question is there a private right of action? And this has never been argued before. I mean, these voting rights cases, individual voters or groups like the ACLU are filing lawsuits on behalf of voters. What they're now, the Eighth Circuit or the Arkansas court is suggesting is that actually there's no private right of action. Only the government could sue. Only the Department of Justice could sue. So if, in fact, you have a politicized Department of Justice, it would effectively gut the entire Voting Rights Act, the jewel in the crown of our democracy and of the civil rights movement. So it's a big threat. And so for people who say, well, it doesn't really matter whether I vote or not, it doesn't really matter who's in office, it makes a very big difference who's in office. And we all need to work to make sure that our constitutional republic is saved.
You know, on a smaller scale, we don't know if that case is going to the Supreme Court yet, by the way. No. But it's likely, it seems to me, to get there since they're different. Courts have come to different conclusions. The ACLU, Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, is doing something in-state in a handful of communities around increasing voter turnout, particularly in communities of color. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. You know, so my team, my action team, the ACLU action team came to me last year and they said, we want to try to go out and find out, not just, like we won automatic voter registration. So when you get your driver's license, you can have an opportunity to register to vote. But a lot of people are registered but then never vote.
Yeah.
So my team put together, looking in Pittsfield, Brockton, and Springfield, three growing majority communities or majority-minority communities. And went around door to door. We knocked on 2,800 doors. We had 2,800 conversations and said to people, why don't you vote? You have the right to vote. Why don't you? And the most common response that we heard was that my vote doesn't make any difference. Oh. It just doesn't make any difference. And let me tell you, it does make a difference. So we went out and we had these conversations, and it's such a great story. Here's a happy New Year's story. In Brockton, there was a woman who, for the first time ever, I think she's the first Haitian American who was running for school board, and she won by 3 votes.
3 votes.
Three
Oh my
votes.
God,
So
that's
anybody
great.
who says your vote doesn't make a difference, it makes a really big difference. And I hope people listening realize that if you can, if you're thinking about it, run for town meeting, run for the school board. Get involved in your community. I've always said this, democracy is a muscle, and when we exercise it, it gets stronger. And so it's really important this year in particular that we do that. So since that pilot project, that was municipal elections for November of 2023, so in 2024, we're really beefing up, and we're calling it BIPOC to the ballot, and we're helping people to get out and exercise their right to vote. And if people listening would like to join, you can go to the ACLU of Massachusetts website and join our action team and be part of the effort to strengthen our democracy in this crucial election year.
Just as a quick aside, one of the things I think, I was talking to various people over vacation, obviously neighbors here, neighbors far away, family and stuff like that. How many people have no idea what's going on in their town anymore because the newspaper's gone?
Yes.
And all of a sudden their taxes are going up. All of a sudden there's a new school building being built. All of a sudden there's some other thing they didn't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to really be paying attention now. I mean, Brookline now has an online paper which does a very good job. We talked about the New Bedford Light a lot, which does a really good job. But not every town that's lost its paper has any way for people to find out
what's going on.
What's happening.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so it's still, we have to take that extra effort. But if you care about your democracy, if you care about your town, if you care about our Commonwealth and our country, getting involved, finding a way, doing that extra effort to be involved or support someone else who's being involved, and pay attention, because it really will make a difference.
By the way, tomorrow, one startup that you didn't mention is going to join us tomorrow. Walter Robinson, formerly Pulitzer Prize winner from the Globe, and Mark Pothier, who are doing a thing in Plymouth, are going to be joining us talking about their local effort to fill the hole that Marjorie is talking about.
News.
So it's
That's
great.
wonderful.
It's a big deal.
So,
property taxes go up too. That's something to really think about if no one's watching City Hall or Town Hall.
Pay attention.
Suddenly, wow.
So the third area that I know you plan to focus on is anti-LGBTQ censorship. We talked a lot about it on the show, book banning and that sort of thing. I have to say that I was not aware until we knew you were coming with this situation in Great Barrington, which is one of the most grotesque things in a state like ours.
Yeah.
That I can you describe what happened there?
So it's really crazy. And this is, again, all politics is local, right, as Tip O'Neill always said. So on December 15th, we first heard the report. It actually came out from the Berkshire Eagle, a reporter named Heather Bellow. And there was an incident in the Great Barrington Public Middle School. An anonymous person contacted, you talked about swatting earlier, right? Contacted the police and said, and complained that in the W.E.B. Du Bois Regional Medical School, there was a book that the caller said was pornographic. And the police and the Berkshire County District Attorney's Office chose to send a police officer down to the school when the school with a body camera on and all the things. So we got the tape, looking for the book, saying that they were going to, arrest somebody for having the book or something. But it turns out it wasn't even a pornographic book. It's a book called Gender Queer. It's an award-winning graphic novel exploring gender and sexuality. And so they couldn't find the book. So we have all of this on tape.
What's the cop's explanation? I don't mean the individual cop. What is the police department's explanation as to why you would send a police officer to a library to find out if a particular book is there?
So it's exactly right. So since then, the police and the district attorney have said, okay, well, we're not going to pursue it any further. But in the first place, they never should have gone down there to look for that. There's academic freedom. Educators and librarians are educated to be able to determine what should and shouldn't be in a book. They should have called it in to the librarian or the principal or whoever,
or the school committee,
or the school committee or whoever. They should never have criminalized it and sent a police officer down there. So the ACLU of Massachusetts plus LGBTQ advocates and defenders, GLAAD, together have been in touch. We've written letters and said you really need to stop this practice of if somebody calls up and says I want the police to go and ban a book, we should say no. We've had more than 400 instances. We're the 4th in the nation here in Massachusetts on calls about book banning.
What's that
according to
about?
the Library Association.
What do you make of it?
We think we're very progressive.
Yeah.
And in fact, there are a lot of people who are not. And I think the notion that I just want to remind people, when you look at history, who has ever been on the right side of book banning? Whenever you have burning books or book bans, those guys are always on the wrong side of history. We need to not have book bans. We need to stop that kind of censorship. And if we think that we're immune from it in Massachusetts, we need to be paying more attention. And again, getting involved in our school board and in our town meetings. That's one way to make sure that this kind of censorship doesn't spread.
What are you running for? I'm serious. I mean, you're urging people. I've urged Marjorie to run for office.
Oh, yeah, forget that.
No, seriously, you're not crazy about certain unions.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be good if you were. She's going to be dismissive. You ever thought about running for anything?
You know what? I haven't, because the ACLU is so nonpartisan that I really have always liked to have the platform where I'm able to work with people of goodwill on both sides. And I'd hate to have to sue the people on the bad side,
they're
but I
fine
will.
people on
That's
both
right.
sides.
That's right.
true, yeah,
You're
yeah.
also involved in this drag show that was being censored up in North
Yeah, well,
Brookfield,
that
too.
was
So
the other
there's
one.
a lot of censoring going on here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear-based censoring. So this was in Great Barrington. So last June, there was an effort, the local group that was having a pride parade. It was the Rural Justice Network is the name of the group. They were having a pride parade, and suddenly the town officials, town fathers, I'll just be clear, said, oh, we don't want you can't march in the pride parade if you're going to have a drag show in the pride parade. And we worked with the local lawyer, and we said, you do know that would be a violation of the First Amendment, and gee, we, the ACLU, would hate to have to sue you, but we're ready to do so. and so they backed down. They restored the permit that they were trying to pull.
Good.
Well, this time around, they're doing it again. So the Rural Justice Network has applied for a permit, and this time they're saying we're not going to let you have it in the first place. And it's nuts. And so this time we said, okay, we will see you in court. So we filed a lawsuit a couple weeks ago under the First Amendment on behalf of the Rural Justice Network and said, you cannot ban or refuse to permit a pride parade to happen because you don't happen to like some of the content in the pride parade. So these are the kinds of things that we're constantly having to respond to. And I will tell you, I've built we have a new freedom of expression project that we've just launched, and I've been hiring up people and lawyers to do this because we're being inundated with these efforts at censorship. And I think it just comes from a culture of fear. And what we need to remember is that in history, you don't want to be on the side of censorship. In a democracy, you want to be able to know that sunlight is the best disinfectant for bad ideas, and we need to continue to support freedom of expression wherever and whenever we can.
Beautifully put there. Nice to see you, Carol Rose.
Carol Rose, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Let's hope 2024 is better, turns out better than a lot of us fear. It will. Thank you very much for coming in. We've been speaking with Carol Rose, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union for Massachusetts. Coming up next, CNN's John King. The Iowa caucuses are 2 weeks away. The New Hampshire vote, 3 weeks away. Oh my God, we're getting close. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. John King's going to give us his analysis of things as they stand. Right now, we are streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. I want to repeat, after talking to Lee Pelton, head of the Boston Foundation and formerly head of Emerson College, about the situation with Claudine Gay, and my question about why she is not defending herself and why the university is not defending her more aggressively, regardless of what your position is. That's how people usually respond to criticism. 10 minutes later, the Globe ran a story saying that Claudine Gay has resigned. The provost, Alan Garber, will become the interim president. We will discuss that at some length tomorrow once we have the full details. We're joined now, though, on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. John is involved with two great reporting projects this election cycle, all over the map and the battleground. Happy New Year, John. It's great to see you.
Happy New Year to both of you. Miss you both. Welcome to the Blur. And the news you're just talking about at Harvard, that will be part of this 2024 conversation.
You are totally right.
The pressures on college campuses, the pressures on leaders of big institutions, the bubbling, forces of politics beneath the surface. So I know it's a big deal in Harvard and Cambridge, in the Boston area. It's going to be a big deal across the country as well because of the conversations it sparks.
Well, by the way, staying on this just a second.
We don't know if it's about the diverse. It's a question about Jews and genocide, or whether this is about allegations of plagiarism. We don't know what it's about, but we do know that we didn't have a chance to talk about it, but some members of the Harvard faculty wrote this piece criticizing Harvard before Claudine Gay's resignation, having to do with they thought that they were essentially knuckling under too much on being too careful about what was said at campus, that there should be more of a free exchange of ideas. Danielle Allen, who ran for governor as a Democrat, very briefly, she wrote a piece that seemed to me to be, for the Washington Post, critical of diversity inclusion efforts, which surprised me, frankly.
Staying on this just for a second, John, I'm glad you said what you said because we didn't intend to talk to you much about it. But Stefanik, who was the one who asked the infamous question at the hearing when the president of my alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania, resigned, said 1 down, 2 to go. I assume she has said or will say in the next few minutes 2 down, 1 to go, meaning the president of MIT has so far gotten full support from her board of trustees. This is one of those huge cultural issues that the Republicans know how to mine so brilliantly. So how do you think it plays out in the weeks and months ahead?
Well, you will see. I think you're right. I think Congresswoman Stefanik and those who support her and these efforts will have a little chest pounding here, if you will, and celebration. Look, Marjorie raised a key point. You raised a key point. This is very complicated because there are other issues that President Gay faced at Harvard as well, including the plagiarism allegations and like. And this clearly came together in a bad storm for her that has now cost her her job. But to the forces at play here, how much of this, the questioning from Congresswoman Stefanik was more about Israel, Hamas. And let's just be honest, all of those college presidents should have been more prepared. Right. They should have known what was coming, and they were not ready to give clear answers. And the fact that they could not give a clear answer, it's a complicated question. But when things get really complicated, you have to have basic core principles. And so that they couldn't say, of course, we want free speech on campus, but of course, there are lines to that when it gets threatening. You can say just about anything. You can't threaten people. The fact that they weren't prepared for that is not just an indictment of those presidents. It's an indictment of their staffs, and it's an indictment of the preparation around them. Just the fact that they did not understand the political climate, whether they agree with it, whether they disagree with it, whether they think the question is appropriate. They knew it was coming. They knew it was coming, and they were not prepared for it. But yes, the Republicans will say, number one, on the Israel-Hamas question, that the pro-Israel forces will continue to try to draw that as a line. But this goes beyond that into what some in the Republican Party, the Trump wing of the Republican Party, says is this, overly woke gang of elites at all the big institutions trying to run the country in a way that does not respect working class people, hardworking people. Is that true? Of course not. Are there cases where you can find examples by those people and say, wow, that's outrageous what they said? Of course, that's true as well. But this debate, this to me will just prove that the debate will accelerate. It will not quiet.
Talking to John King from CNN. John, one of the things when Margie or I ask you a question about a stunning poll, you're always respectful of us. And rather than saying, please give me a break, you always say things like, it's a moment in time. It's just a snapshot in time. Well, it's about to not just be a snapshot of a moment in time anymore. What is it, 14 days to the Iowa caucuses, 3 weeks to New Hampshire. And there's a pretty stunning poll, I think it's from ABC News, talking about how Donald Trump is not only drawing close with Hispanic voters, but has overtaken Joe Biden, and more incredibly, overtaken Joe Biden with young voters, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think voted close to 2-1 for Biden in the last Biden-Trump go-around. What's going on in your estimation, John King?
What's going on is that the American people want change. They don't like what they see. And so what is that about? Number one, is it that Joe Biden has not been able to communicate yes, inflation is still an issue. Yes, people are still, it's a cumulative exhaustion from COVID, then, hard economic conditions from inflation, and the president has not been able to articulate or convince the American people, but look, things are getting better. Your gas prices are down some. Your food prices at least have leveled off, and maybe they're starting to come down. There's plenty of economic data for the president to make a case that the economy is in pretty good shape. Look at the way the financial markets. I know not all Americans are invested in the financial markets, but you can look at the unemployment data. You can look at the hiring data. You can look at the financial markets. You can look at the growth in the economy in the last couple of quarters. There's plenty of good news for the president, but he has not convinced an exhausted American public that things are getting better. Now, how much of that is that they just don't listen to him because they don't view him as up to the job? I think, again, this is a very complicated question. But if the election were tomorrow, Donald Trump would beat Joe Biden. I'm absolutely convinced of that. The election is not tomorrow. The election is in November. It's still 10 months away. But one of the interesting questions, I don't have the answer for you now, but Joe Biden thinks he can run against Donald Trump again, saying you don't want to go back to that, right? You don't want to go back to who he is, to what he represents, whether it's policy, whether it's the personal, whether it's the horrific things Donald Trump says at times that are just sort of against the American experiment and the American ideals. He thinks he can do that. I don't know the answer to that question because Donald Trump's not the incumbent president. Joe Biden is. And so we're going to have almost two incumbents running against each other, which has not happened in any of our lifetimes, of course. It is an incredibly rare event in American history. But Joe Biden's problem right now is that people view him as the guy in charge, and they want something different.
Well, every time I hear about the economy with inflation, which obviously affects everybody, and gas prices, assuming you drive a car, which most everybody does, I think that they constantly forget, it seems to me, Democrats, and they did this before in 2020, they did this before in 2016, that a lot of that matters, but when you're drowning in student loan debt and child care expense debt and your rent or you can't buy a house, you feel as if capitalism is failing you. I mean, you hear about more and more young people thinking that capitalism is failing them. It's a rotten system, and it only takes care of the people that are the zillionaires, and they can't get two nickels to rub together.
Amen. Marjorie, you should just go back to this tape and write that down because I think that is the defining question for the campaign and for anyone running for any office is to answer those questions because everybody has their own question. My oldest son is going to get married in the courtyard of the building you're in today at the public library.
Good for him.
Come June, he's got a good job. His fiance has a good job, and they are dealing with the very questions you just put right there on the table. How can we afford a house in the Boston area? Can we bring kids into the world right now? What is the economy going to look like in 4 or 5 years? And so the politician who can figure out a way to put a North Star up there and say, that's where we're going. It's going to be messy because I can't map it out for you right now because I don't know what the global economy is going to look like. I don't know what the Midwest economy is going to look like. I don't know what the biotech sector is going to look like. I can't tell you everything along the way, but that's where we're going. And that's what I'm fighting for. That politician, I think, would have a chance if they could actually inspire people to think this person's fighting to answer my question. Or my questions, as opposed to just both parties right now are in this. This is why the American people are disgusted. America is willing to have this conversation. That's the thing I'm learning on the road. Americans of all stripes, fervent Trump supporters, the harshest Trump critics, they're willing to get in a room and talk most of this stuff out. The political leaders aren't doing it, though, because they benefit from the polarization. That's how they raise their money. That's how they stoke turnout. And it's disgusting, a big swath of the country that wants some help finding those answers answers to the questions you just went through.
John King, when you mention your terrific work, and they really are captivating pieces when you sit down with real voters as opposed to numbers and horse race stuff that we spend far too much time on, polling shows that roughly a quarter of Trump supporters say they'd reconsider if he were convicted of any of these serious crimes of which he is accused. What kind of feel do you get from these sit-downs with people about these trials? One of which is supposed to start, it's not going to happen, on March 4th, another on May 20th, another on August 5th. What kind of reaction do you get from Trump supporters about possible criminal convictions?
Look, I think that the biggest political story of 2023 is Donald Trump's resilience. Right beneath that is Joe Biden's inability to sort of start to mitigate some of his weaknesses. But Trump's resilience is because he has for years played the grievance card, and he has convinced to some of his core supporters, beyond any doubt, that they're out to get him, that he has done nothing wrong, and no matter what he does, someone's going to come and get him. However, I've said this before, when you talk to a lot of Trump supporters, and there are some Democrats who just think that they're all idiots and they're all morons and they're all on Kool-Aid. It's not true. He got 77 million votes roughly last time. These are hardworking Americans. They're your brothers and your sisters and your neighbors and your mailman and your doctor and your lawyer. A lot of them, up here, they say, the system's out to get Trump and I'm with Trump and Trump fights for me. Back here, they're common sense, hardworking Americans. And I do think there's a reason Donald Trump keeps trying to delay everything. Doesn't want any of these trials to take place before the election because he gets it too, and his people get it too. He has, whatever you think of Donald Trump, he has some very smart political people around him in this campaign, and they understand that it's going to, if it is Trump versus Biden, and we still have some time on that question, but if it is Trump versus Biden, it's going to come down to 4 or 5 states again, maybe 6. It's going to come down to 100 to 150,000 votes, maybe even fewer than that in 3 or 4 of those states. And if Donald Trump lost some support because he was convicted, that could be enough to swing it. There are other factors as well, including we have to wait to see the filing deadlines for these third-party candidates out there. But that's one of the things the Biden team counts on, is that something bad happening to Donald Trump that doesn't wipe out his support, but just takes a sliver of his support and puts it back into play. That's why Trump doesn't want these trials to happen, which is another, so we talk about when are the primaries, when are the filing deadlines. The other big thing you have to keep on your calendar in 2024 is Donald Trump legal cases.
Well, I love I think the Globe had a story yesterday today talking about how Joe Biden borrowed a line from Kevin White, which supposedly originally came from Pierre Trudeau up in Canada, saying, "Don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative." So that may be what he's reduced to in the last few days of the campaign this year is, do you want this guy back? But as of today, you say a lot of people seem to want him back.
I grew up. My dad was a union guy and a guard at the old Charles Street jail, and he had a lot of things to say about Kevin White back in the day and contract negotiations, and I'm not going to repeat them on family-friendly radio.
Hey, John King, what's your take? Your colleague, former chief advisor to Barack Obama, David Axelrod, who's now part of one of the regular commentators on CNN.
He's great.
Wrote a piece saying that knocking Trump off the ballot, as was done by the Colorado Supreme Court and by the Secretary of State in Maine, would be a political, I'm putting words in his mouth, but he essentially said a political disaster because it feeds exactly what you were talking about a couple of minutes ago, that it's rigged, that they're out to get him, that it's Democratic prosecutors and secretaries of state and that sort of thing. Is there a mainstream Democratic leadership fear about this thing, or where are people?
Well, I mean, we just know from past experience, the Trump indictments, anytime you come after Trump, that it gins up his people and allows him to play that card, right? Here they come, here the elites come, in some cases unelected elites, in other cases elected elites or judges are coming to get me. And so David makes a valid point because David understands the map. He understands this is going to come down to 3 or 4 states, 5 states maybe, where this small segment of population swinging back and forth, and it feeds Trump, or it allows Trump to keep his people in the fight by they're still after me. If Donald Trump keeps you in the boxing ring, you're unlikely to sort of sit in the front row or maybe even go back a few steps and think about it. He wants to keep you in the fight. And I do think this is something that Trump's people do bring up. Like, he hasn't been convicted yet. How can you say he's an insurrectionist? Right. So there's an argument there. And I know there are people out there throwing things at the radio or if they're watching this on YouTube or whatever. So did they put the cart before the horse in the process here? I think it's one of the questions. At the same time, I completely understand the anger people have at watching January 6th, and especially those who have paid very close attention to Donald Trump's very hands-on role in the weeks and weeks and weeks up to January 6th, and then including January 6th. I get the anger. I get the frustration. I get those who say there has to be some accountability. But I also think David Axelrod is very smart, that before any court has convicted Donald Trump of any conduct about January 6th, to take him off the ballot because of it. He's right that it will feed into Trump's argument.
Well, even though there are those people who say that a conviction or two will dissuade them from voting for him again, I think at this juncture we have to concede that Donald Trump defies the laws of gravity. I mean, he just can do what he does, and I don't think anybody else, I hope, cannot get away with what he's gotten away with. But the guy, for whatever reason, as he said a million years ago, I could shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue and people would still vote for me.
And Joe Biden defied gravity in 2020, Marjorie as well. So again, that's what makes this year so unpredictable to me. You have two potential candidates. Again, we're just starting the primary process. So let's have an open mind that voters might give us something different, or that some event might happen that gives us something different. But Donald Trump, he could never win the Republican nomination in 2016. And there was absolutely no way he could win the presidency. Then Joe Biden lost to Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, and he was done. Now he's president of the United States. I just think anyone who wants to write the final chapter of this election year, as we have a conversation in the first week of January, good luck. But you're just, let's not get out over our skis. Let's live it one day at a time, one primary at a time, one court appearance at a time, one economic report at a time. And we're in the first week of what is going to be just a simply unprecedented and likely very volatile year.
Let's talk about Nikki Haley for just a second. I mean, she's been doing well, even though she seemed to be confused about what the cause of the Civil War was when she was talking about it was freedoms and capitalism and individual liberties instead of slavery. But she also said she would pardon Trump if he's convicted, and she's done pretty well in the primary. So where does she fit in?
That's a great question in the sense that you have, whether it's Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis, candidates who say the Republican Party must move on from Trump, but who are extra careful, some would argue too careful, in trying to not alienate the core Trump base because they know they need those voters or they want those voters come a general election. Where is she right now? As of this morning, CNN announced that only Haley and DeSantis have qualified for the debate we're going to have just a few days before the Iowa caucuses. And the question now, 13 days before the first votes in Iowa, is the same question it was really 13 months ago. Can one Republican emerge as a significant, serious threat to Donald Trump? And that's what Iowa and New Hampshire will tell us. Think about that. Iowa in 13 days. New Hampshire, as Jim said, in 21 days. So in 22 days, we will most likely have the answer to the question, is there any real threat to Donald Trump's renomination? And the voters of Iowa and New Hampshire will tell us whether somebody has at least enough momentum to go on to Nevada and South Carolina and make the case, I'm a better candidate, I'm a stronger candidate. He is weakened by what the voters in Iowa and New Hampshire have done. If Donald Trump comes out of Iowa and New Hampshire with a head of steam, I'm not saying it's impossible, I just find it improbable that anybody gets him. So Haley is stronger than DeSantis in New Hampshire right now. DeSantis is marginally stronger than her in Iowa right now. Both of those states, it's a cliche, but in both of those states, we know voters tend to, they agonize over this because the process is so important to them. Their role in the process is so important to them. Can somebody make a break? Nikki Haley at the moment, if you look at the map where it goes, has more potential at the moment. I want to overstate this, to build an anti-Trump coalition. She probably has more potential today than DeSantis does. But if somebody starts to win, that can change everything. So I do think Iowa and New Hampshire become pivotal. Can one of them break out, or is it just Trump and the two of them lumped together in a distant second and third? If that's the case, Trump wins.
Okay, before you go, very quickly, we were talking about whether Donald Trump will be taken off the ballot. Do you think Bill Belichick will be taken off the ballot after next Sunday?
I'll tell you what I think on Twitter in my face. Is that what he said the other day?
Oh, yeah. I love that.
My face. Maybe that's his new venture. He's going to take a little of my space and Facebook and create. I don't know the answer to that question. I suspect we're into a new chapter in Patriots history after the Jets next week, but I do not pretend to understand Bill Belichick or Robert Kraft. I can understand Patriots fans. It's been a really frustrating few years, including a frustrating this year. But it's almost time for spring training, Jim.
That's right.
Wow.
Hope springs eternal.
Happy New Year, our friend. It's great to see you, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you, John. And congratulations on the wedding.
Oh, yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's great.
What a great place to get married here at the Boston Public Library. It's gorgeous.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
We have been speaking with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, host of All Over the Map and The Battleground, two great reporting projects this year with his network, CNN. Coming up, another moldy BPR chestnut. Jim insisted again.
I did not insist. I did not insist.
Can't get out. We're going to talk about New Year's resolutions. What an original idea. If you're still someone who makes them, is this the year you're lowering the floor, setting some more realistic expectations, like Jim, who said he's going to let me finish a sentence uninterrupted this year.
I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it.
Okay, that should last maybe 2 days, maybe 2 minutes, maybe never. Anyway, we're going to open the lines, ask you, what is your New Year's resolution? And let's be real, you're going to be giving it up by tomorrow. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Margery Egan live at the library, streaming at facebook.com and youtube.com/GBH News. It is New Year's resolution time. What'd you call that? Moldy old chestnut?
That's right.
So maybe you're a strict resolution setter with specific goals like, I don't know, losing weight, eating healthier, exercising more, being more present with your kids, spending more time volunteering. Maybe you're just trying to get through this month detoxing from the great December gluttony of the holidays and are trying to make it through January without any alcohol. Or with everything going on out of our own control, maybe you're setting your sights on resolutions a little more attainable. For example, Marjorie asked me this morning, I said, I'm thinking about being genuinely kind to one person by 2025. And I have 363 days left to get that done.
Oh, wow.
Just not going to happen today. So we want to know, what are your resolutions for the new year? Should we even be setting them anymore? Or is it time to move beyond a resolution, just buckle in for whatever's coming our way in 2024? 877-301-8970. I learned a few things today that actually surprised me. I assumed that while almost everybody made resolutions, I was wrong. That almost nobody honored them, and I was wrong about that too.
Yeah, they do.
Only 40% of people, this is the Washington Post, 40% of people make resolutions, and more than 60% have some success in achieving whatever their resolution was, and they attribute it to something I'd never heard the term of before, but it makes sense, the fresh start effect.
Yes.
The notion that it's this formal date, and you can sort of start all over kind of thing. And I sort of buy it. So we want to know if you have a trick of the trade, if you are someone who has set resolutions and met your goals, at least in part, we'd love to hear whether you think your formula is transferable. If you don't set resolutions, I don't think Marjorie does because you think it's ridiculous, let us know. I set resolutions. I do.
Oh, yeah? What's yours?
I told you. I said before the show. I have to.
Be kind to someone before.
No.
20,
well, I'm
okay.
fairly comfortable. I can achieve maybe in the summer. The other thing is I have to lose like 25 pounds.
Yeah.
And I said to you and our team this morning that if I didn't, I'd have to start wearing a robe to work. Because let me tell you, I am really ready to explode out of. By the way, Sandra, our colleague here, made an excellent point, which I was not aware of. Thank you, Jamie, for sharing it with me. Sandra made the point that since it's a leap year, I have an extra day to be nice to one person.
That's
so
good.
That increases my chances
I think you may need that extra 24 hours to get your resolution.
Why do you not set resolutions?
Well, my life is just perfect, Jim. I don't need to resolve.
No, I'm serious. Why do you not? Why would you not do something small and achievable so you have a great sense of satisfaction? I did it. Why not do that?
You know what I do, and this is everybody keeps their calendars on their phone, and I keep my calendar sort of on my phone. But I get my new little cute little date book, and that's my very exciting thing to do for the new
There's
year.
no chance in the world that you were filling in a date. Is this no chance?
I have
I'm sorry.
Right here.
Let me see it. Hold it up.
Here it is.
Hold it up. She disappeared. Where is she?
There it is.
What's written
Isn't
in
that
it?
cute?
What's in it?
It's my list for today.
Okay, what's your list? Let's hear it.
Well, I already told you.
Oh, you mean the 4 things you're going to buy at Whole Foods?
Yeah.
No, that's
Trader
a hell of a
Joe's,
resolution.
actually.
877.
They have great bread at Trader Joe's. You know, that Tuscan pane bread, whatever it is. It's great.
Yeah, good. 877-301-8970. You're a resolution setter, and if you're a resolution setter, are you a goal achiever? And if you don't do it all, like Marjorie does not do, what's your deal?
Okay, listen to this. Most people, the most made resolution, we didn't say this yet, improving your finances. That's number one.
Wait, the resolution's most set, okay.
Number 2, losing weight. And number 3, improving your diet. Those are the things that people talk about a lot. And I think exercise is another one that's on there. If you go to a gym where you go to, I do yoga, you go to the yoga class, place is packed today. Everybody's in there because they made the resolutions.
For a day or two. It's like joining a gym.
You watch it dwindle down. And then people make other resolutions.
Like what?
Well, these are the ones that are rarely made. But making more time for hobbies, that's 7%. Learning a new skill, 8%. Traveling more, 6%. So there's not that many. We got a text from, who is the person that just said, Donna says she's going to support more small businesses in her community. That's very nice.
Well, isn't that achievable?
Yeah, that's very achievable.
Is Amazon a small business in our community?
That is not a small business. No, it is not.
877-301-8970. Kristen Wellesley, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
I am actually quitting smoking.
Good for you.
And finally going to do it because got news at Christmas that our oldest and his wife are going to have a child.
Excellent motivation.
There's an incentive. So what are your
Nobody
strategies?
wants Grandpa Smokey.
Yeah. What are your strategies, Chris? I remember when I quit smoking, I had to stay out of quit drinking, stay out of bar rooms, do anything that would associate with smoking. Yeah, because I think a lot of people smoke more when they drink, right?
Okay.
Or drink coffee. That's another one.
So what's your strategy, Chris?
The best. Just don't smoke. Literally, just don't pick up a cigarette and light it.
Okay, well that's
it's that
very
simple.
good. That's very good. That's
yeah.
You've
Happy
got a
New
lot
Year.
of willpower.
Well, same to you. I hope it's that simple. Laura from Marshfield says, this is my kind of woman. New Year's resolutions, eat more junk food, drink more, be meaner to people. 0 chance for failure. That is exactly that. She really nailed it there. 877-301-8970. Do you have any idea we should have looked this up. Where did New Year's resolutions come from?
I don't know, but here's a good one.
What is it?
I intend to listen to more music and less news in 2024.
That's a problem.
However, I will continue my daily BPR habit. Thank you, Elaine from Medford.
Thank you, yeah.
And that somebody else says that they decided yesterday that next year he'll start making New Year's resolutions. That's Don in Hudson. Dave in Dedham, thank you for calling.
Hello, Dave in Dedham.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Oh, wonderful. Awesome. I called last year, and I told you guys I had this great revolutionary idea to do 52 micro.
I think I remember this.
Instead of one big one.
Oh.
Yeah, and how'd it go?
And Jim, you told me to call you back and tell you how it went. And if I had done that, I would have called you on January 21st and let you know that I hadn't done more than 3 weeks worth.
Oh no! Oh
it was
no!
Hard. Yeah, I couldn't keep it up. But I am trying that again this year. And this year I have an accountability buddy,
which
is
in
Canada, and we're going to meet every 2 weeks. So we're doing 3 mini resolutions, and then we each have 2 weeks to complete them.
What are they?
I think we're going to be more successful.
Like what? Yeah.
So, for example, I'm a writer, and he is a movie director, and he wrote a short film, and he's going to try to get it made and produced and shopped out. And I am going to try to make a TV show this year.
Oh,
I'm
God.
ambitious, but
that's pretty
ambitious.
ambitious.
The little goals are towards those 2 big goals.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the key thing is to have manageable, small victories along the way to your big resolutions so you don't get discouraged. Do you know what I mean, Dave?
That's exactly. I think we're already gearing up. We did something else. We got a head start in December. So we actually started in December, but it officially kicks off in January. So we've already started building the habit.
Okay, so I said to you last year, call us next year and let us know how it goes. Can you call us next year and let us know how it goes?
I will, and if the TV show gets made, I'll let you know.
I knew you would. Dave, good luck with all of it, and good luck to your friend, too.
Okay, a texter says, Jim, if you want to lose weight this year, that'll be great, because then we won't have to listen to you eat on the air. Oh.
Occasionally, I get caught because our breaks are short, Margie,
Yes.
as you say all the time.
Michael from Lynn says he's a big runner, and this year his goal is to run a marathon, which is pretty impressive. Jean from Derry, New Hampshire says, I resolved to not take as many vacation days as the Massachusetts legislature or Boston Public Radio hosts for that matter.
By the way, we have a lot of vacation. We don't have nowhere near as much vacation as the Massachusetts legislature has. You know that they leave at the end of July. I assume people know in election years. So we will not see them starting August 1st until the following year.
Now, here's an interesting one.
What's that?
This sounds horrible, but everyone should make a resolution to make a will this year. We sadly and unexpectedly lost a family member over the holidays without a will, and it has been difficult. All the legal pieces we're now trying to put together, and it's a real hassle for the family.
It's a rather depressing.
It's a depressing one, but it is true. I mean, if you leave your family, I always wonder about that too. Supposedly you get hit by a bus, all your passwords, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Have you told anybody your passwords?
Well, no, but what I've done, I've decided not to get hit by a bus. So I figure there are two choices: give my passwords to people, or not get hit by a bus.
Oh, here's another one.
Yes.
Vanessa in Gloucester. I've resolved not to buy any clothes this year. I have everything I need if I get invited to a wedding or asked to climb a mountain. There are things in my closet I've never worn, so it will still feel like I have a new outfit.
Well, actually, that's also an achievable thing, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, John from Upton's complaining about you chewing too, Jim.
Well, by the way, it is rare. What happens is we have a 1-minute break.
That's right.
Regular commercial radio, where we used to be, you mentioned this during Pledge
6
every
and
year.
7 minutes.
6 or 7 minutes.
You have to shove the food in
You
really
do have
quickly.
to eat, and you hope that you've swallowed it by the time you get back. And if you haven't swallowed it, you chew a little bit. And I would be troubled by it too, but it is what it is. I hate that expression. Why do I use that?
It is what it
I'm not
is.
going to use the expression, it is what it is, again in 2024. Nancy in Providence, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Well, hello.
Well, hello to you.
I love your show.
Thank you.
I listen all the time.
Oh, thank you very much.
So my New Year's resolution last year was to read a book a week. Or a total of 52 books in the year.
And
I did it.
Are
I
you
made it.
kidding me?
Wow.
That is fabulous.
Yeah. So are you working are you retired, or how did you do this?
I am retired. I work part-time, but
that helps.
But I didn't feel like I was reading enough. And I just felt like I was watching too much TV and stuff like that. So I used to work at the Rockefeller Library at Brown.
Oh,
so I was immersed with books. So I just decided to, set a reasonable goal instead of like, lose 10 pounds or go to the gym. But the great thing about this goal was I got to read a lot of great books. And I also figured even if I didn't meet my goal, I'd still have read like 40 books or something.
So Nancy,
go ahead, Margaret.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you go ahead. No,
Did you set a specific time every day that you're going to set aside at least 45 minutes a day to read, or how did you do it?
Sometimes I would take like a half an hour in the morning to read after watching like morning news programs. And a lot of times I just read in bed, and so I used actual books, like print books, because I found that very comfortable. And, it really depended. I read a combination about half and half of nonfiction books and novels.
Okay.
So I really just mixed it up.
Nancy, before you go away, do you think you would have read 52 books in 52 weeks had you not made a resolution?
Probably not.
That's pretty exciting, actually. Congratulations. That's a great story. I love that. Nancy, talk to you soon. Happy New Year. We appreciate it.
That is a great story.
That is great.
And you know what Nancy said about wanting the books? I did the Kindle thing
Physical.
for a while. Forget it. Or reading on my iPad.
It's hard to read in bed with a hard copy book, though. That's the problem.
It is. But there's something weird. I don't know. I just can't get the iPad Kindle kind of thing. Chris in Taunton, thank you for calling.
Hello, Chris in Taunton.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
I think we're good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah. Love your show.
Thank you.
This is a very, very simple resolution, but that's the only way I'll keep it.
Sure.
I'm gonna put my hearing aids on first thing in the morning and keep them on all day so I don't frustrate everyone around.
And why were you not
Chris,
doing
that's
that?
a good one.
But
That's
why
a
were you
good
not
one.
doing that in the past, Chris?
Well, first of all, I don't really want to hear everybody.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
Yeah, but I do frustrate most people around me. So.
You know, that is a good one, though,
kind
Chris.
act,
I remember
Chris.
my father-in-law, you know, toward the end of his life, really got deaf, and he missed out on the conversations.
No, but she's saying it out of respect for. Aren't you?
Yes.
Talking about being respectful to other
But
people.
that's what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He missed out on the conversations. We missed out on conversing with him because he couldn't hear what was said at the end of the table. So, and you know, if you can't hear, there's links to dementia. You withdraw. I mean, if you need hearing aids, you should wear
great,
hearing
Chris.
aids.
That is really, that's a great one,
Yeah,
Chris.
that
Good
is
luck
a really
with that.
good one.
Let us know how it goes.
I
Happy
also
New Year
think
to
it
you.
was, like Chris said, that you don't want to hear everything. I think part of it was because he didn't want to hear my mother-in-law complaining, you know what I mean?
Well, that's unfortunate.
I know, but I think that's what happens sometimes.
Have they both moved on, or
They
no?
have both,
So
they
you
have
can
both
say
moved
that.
on, yeah, but he was a great guy. And
How about her?
she was great, too, but I particularly liked him because he loved to talk about politics, and he was a big union guy, big Democrat from, he was from New York City. But anyway.
Did you ever tell him you hated the teachers union, or no?
I did not discuss the teachers union with him because he was a union steward, and he was a big, you know, by the way,
Yeah.
I am in favor of unions, Jim. I don't
Look at her.
particularly
I hope people
like
are watching right
the
now on
teachers
YouTube.
unions animus toward any kind of reform.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like about them. And I'm not fond of the Boston Police Officers Union, although they have gotten concessions.
Oh, by the way,
given
with Boston
concessions
police
this year.
officers, that contract that you were praising, did they agree to it? I can't remember.
They agreed to it.
Oh, my God.
Because
Well, they were partners with the mayor, weren't they?
Because somebody really pushed them.
Yeah.
Most Democratic.
They can say no.
Most Democratic politicians, Jim, do not.
Do they get
push
any
them.
credit for saying
Or
yes?
do they push the teachers union?
Do they get any credit for saying yes, or do they not?
Who, the
Cops,
the
Patrolmen's
cops?
Association.
I think that it would have been nice if they had included beating people up, excessive force, among the things that don't get to go to
I don't know
arbitration.
what all the details are.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that still gets to go to arbitration, which is a real problem.
Ev Morcia, I hope I got the name right. Welcome to the show. You're in Salem. Welcome.
Oh my God, you got it right. Ev Morcia, accent on
Ev
the
Morcia,
C.
that's beautiful. Welcome to the show, Ev Morcia.
Thank you. It's so nice to hear you both. I love listening to you guys. I just
Thanks.
happened to be parked, getting the sunshine, and said, I don't have any resolutions. Just get through every day the best I can.
Well, that's a
guess that's my
resolution.
resolution.
I was just going to say, that's actually a pretty beautiful resolution. Ev Morcia, thank you, and good luck not honoring your non-resolutions. That's probably a good attitude.
Did you just make a resolution,
Thank you.
Jim?
What do you mean?
Did you just say, I won't say it is what it is again in 2023?
And I said it already?
It's 2024.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I meant
Okay.
I meant 2020. I really can't stand that expression. I used it myself.
Somebody else is trying to watch 20 films I've never seen before, from before the person was born. That's
Well, that's
pretty
like
good.
the woman with the 52 books. How wonderful is that kind of achievement?
Yeah, that's.
And it's also not
and
a
the guy that's quitting
sacrifice.
smoking, because it's not easy to quit smoking. It's very
Yeah,
impressive.
but even though that's good in the long run, it's painful in the short run. That movie and the book resolutions are ones that you love while you're doing them, as opposed to me needing to lose 25 pounds or something, which is going to be unpleasant getting there. By the way, we're almost done. And since I mentioned to you, we're going to discuss in some depth the resignation of Harvard's president tomorrow. Let me just read you the first paragraph of her letter to the Harvard community that came out just in the last hour or so. It is with a heavy heart but a deep love for Harvard that I write to share that I will be stepping down as president. This is not a decision that came too easily. Indeed, it has been difficult beyond words because I've looked forward to working with so many of you to advance the commitment to academic excellence that has propelled this great university across centuries. But after consultation with members of the corporation, that's the Board of Trustees at Harvard, it's become clear that it's in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign so that our community can navigate this moment of extraordinary challenge with a focus on the institution rather than the individual. I haven't read the whole letter. I don't know what she mentions as the cause, but you know, when I was talking to Lee Pelton, former president of Emerson, now head of the Boston Foundation before, about how shocked I am that there was virtually no defense of Gay put up by Gay herself, nor by her bosses at the corporation, other than that one late letter. It should have been obvious that the reason they weren't defending themselves is because it was just waiting for her to announce that she was leaving.
I mean, MIT came out very, very quickly and said we give our full
Immediately.
support to the
Yeah,
president here,
they did.
Kornbluth, and she is still there, and Harvard didn't do likewise, and Claudine Gay is not there. You know what's really sad about this, though? That this all began with that vicious attack by Representative Stefanik, who has attacked them for their supposed anti-Semitism, and while she has been dabbling in anti-Semitism for years now.
And white nationalism.
Well, and et cetera. So it was really the height of hypocrisy that she got away with this is pretty.
Yeah, but I agree with
upsetting.
every word you're saying, but the solution to that would have been a simple answer to the question by the three presidents. Yes, it does violate our policy.
Well, as we
Next
said,
question.
there were members of the faculty that came out and basically were criticizing Claudine Gay and the atmosphere about free speech at Harvard that was in the Globe a couple of days ago. And I mentioned before, Danielle Allen, who's black, wrote a piece in the Washington Post. She ran for governor briefly.
And is a professor
at Harvard. And she wrote a piece basically criticizing the free speech edicts and who gets to say what and who gets criticized for not saying things. So there was a recognition within the university that things are not as they should be.
By the way, we're going to discuss the whole Claudine Gay situation in greater depth tomorrow, so
Paul Revel's
make sure you're with us. He is? Oh,
yeah,
great.
He's going to be here.
Who obviously is
at Harvard.
Is a professor at Harvard.
Okay, so we hope he can talk about it. I suppose he can.
I'm sure he's talked about it before.
Okay, we are done for today, but thank you very much for tuning in to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. We have a 3-hour one and a half-hour one. I recommend the latter, not the former.
You're incredible.
Tune in tomorrow for Harvard national security expert Juliet Kayyem.
And her attitude is, by the way, don't waste time listening to the show either. Why bother? Just listen to maybe listen to half of the 25-minute podcast and then go make a resolution.
I mean, 3 hours is a big time commitment. You could be reading your book.
We're staying here for 3 hours.
Oh, that's right. That's what we do
it's
for a living,
big time
Jim.
Commitment.
We get a paycheck here for being here for 3 hours, I
Sorry.
do believe.
Okay.
Anyway, in addition to Juliet Kayyem, I'm going to talk with NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, former Massachusetts Education Secretary Paul Revel, and we'll talk to him in depth about Claudine Gay at Harvard, naturalist Cy Montgomery, and two folks from the nonprofit news organization, the Plymouth Independent. Walter Robinson, a great journalist for years, Pulitzer Prize winner from the Boston Globe, and Mark Porthier. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to the team here at the Boston Public Library, Maddie Geyer, who fixed my computer this morning, Brad Lewis, and Sandra Lopez Burke.
And thank you all for coming. We really appreciate that as well.
That's right.
Marjorie, it's great to see you.
Great to
Missed
see you
you. Haven't
too,
seen you
Jim.
in a couple of weeks.
Great to see you too. I am Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browning.
Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you can tune in tomorrow. And meanwhile, have a great afternoon.